What up, everybody? Good morning and happy Friday. TGIF action coming at you. DK Show up on the air. Your radio dials 105.1 FM, 790 AM. Also available online. Stream it up, sportstalk1051.com. Smart devices. The video stream also up and rolling. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff over there. Appreciate you making us part of your start on this Friday morning, ending the work week here. What do we got on our good old game plan for us this morning? Brewers begin a 4-game series against the Cardinals with a win last night, 7-1. Brewers taking that game one against the Redbirds there. Ortiz, Hoskins, all homering in the game last night. Yelich playing a full 9 innings, even in the outfield, set it past. His back feels good. Even got a triple there. That was probably maybe a big test for Yelich there, but he feels good. So Brewers, good start last night, especially going up against Sonny Gray, who has been pretty darn good this year. His lone loss was actually a game against the Brewers earlier on in the season, but didn't pitch like a losing pitcher. Last night, though, Brewers were able to put 6 earned runs on him, and Sonny Gray giving up 3 home runs in the game. So Tobias Myers getting the start. He went 4, giving up just 1 earned run, striking out 6. Koenig picking up the win. His 4th win of the season. He's 4-1 now, but he pitched a couple innings of relief too. So with a game like that, with Koenig getting 2 innings and Vieira pitching 2 innings, and helping out the bullpen there a little bit too. So we'll recap this game and then also take a look at tonight, which should be rather interesting, not just because it's game 2 of this series, but it sounds like Robert Gasser, one of the top prospects in this organization for the Brewers. But he's a left-handed starter, number 5, Milwaukee's number 5 prospect. He's slated to make his major league debut with the start tonight. So maybe kind of long way to debut or such, but there's some expectations for the kid. Maybe not necessarily for this year, but there's some excitement that maybe he's another one of those youngsters in line to hopefully have a solid Brewers major league career. So, but we'll see him tonight at AM Fan Field. See what kind of stuff. If you're not familiar with him, you'll get your first glimpse up here. He was a part of the trade package, by the way. He was a part of the trade package from the Padres when they traded Josh Hader. So, 24-year-old, but yeah, he's a part of that. So I mean, if he goes out there and he balls out, and he could be a future starter for a while now for the Brewers, and maybe makes that Josh Hader trade just a skosh, a little bit more. But yeah, we'll talk about that, especially when we get our good buddy Brandon Berg in. He knows all about the farm system and the prospects when it comes to the Brewers. So we'll get his thoughts on Robert making the start tonight and his projection and for his career and all that good stuff. Plus, we'll do a little local sports roundup brought to you by Robinson's Appliance Center. Excuse me, joking up there a little bit. So Brandon will be joining us next hour. Right before him, though, we've got an Inside the Training Room with Dr. Crow, Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. I will talk to him about Wade Miley surgery, a little bit of a hybrid surgery with his Tommy John surgery. So we'll get a little bit of an update on that and get his thoughts on that and a bunch of other stuff to kind of recap here too with Dr. Crow. I want to talk a little green and gold, a little Packers this morning too, because yesterday we heard from some of the defensive position coaches and such, and obviously we're all excited about the potential of what this defense is going to look like. I think we're all maybe even a lot of us expecting it to be better I think we're all kind of expected to be better, right? I mean, that's the expectation here. But there's a lot of excitement and intrigue surrounding this. And we've highlighted different players with this new defensive system that could really benefit, or new guys coming in like Xavier McKinney. You got a playmaking safety back there. We've highlighted how Jeff Hafley's what he wants to do, press man, that sort of stuff. We've highlighted Quay Walker maybe being more active, and then he gets paired up with Edgerrin Cooper. We've highlighted, Kenny Clark, and then Rashawn Gary and Lucas Van Ness kind of playing now with their hand in the dirt. But there's one guy that we haven't really talked a whole lot about in terms of like just how beneficial could this switch in defense be for his career. And I want to talk a little Devontae Wyatt when we talk about that. So we've been talking about a lot of a lot about other different individual players or the defense as a whole because we know it's changing. But Devontae Wyatt is heading into, I think, a big year, third year, first round pick. And maybe for some, we haven't seen enough, or maybe, haven't lived up to that first round tag, if you will. But this could be a pretty big year. And how can this defensive change really benefit a guy like Devontae Wyatt? So I want to talk a little bit about Devontae Wyatt. Jason Rebovich, the defensive line coach for the Packers, had some comments yesterday about, what this defense is going to look like, what the defensive line is going to look like and such. And he said it's about tackles for losses and sacks. We're looking to create havoc in the backfield. And it pretty much said, look at what the Texans, 49ers, and Jets all try to do on defense. That's what Green Bay is going to try to emulate, to which I think is probably music to a lot of Packers fans' ears out there. Like, oh, yeah, heck yeah, let's go, let's ride. That's what we have wanted for a while now. But I think a guy like Devontae Wyatt, maybe we kind of overlooked him a little. I think this is a big year for Devontae Wyatt. I really do. I think this is a big time year. So we'll hit that up and talk a little bit about that a little bit later on here too. So, but also we'll do some cream of the crop. Play along with us. Who's your cream of the crop? Okay, let me know. Join in on the conversation at that Shoe Doctors bullpen line with a quick text 715-830-1912. Just a little bit of a note too. I'm actually going to be out from about 7:45 to 8:45. Luke's going to come in and fill for me for an hour with Brandon. Gotta head to Hutsy's school for an event there. So just giving you a little bit of a heads up there. Not that you guys will miss me or anything like that, but I'll be out for about an hour there. But Luke and Brandon will be on here filling in for me till I get back here. Just got an event at school for Hutsy this morning. So, but they'll keep the conversation flowing there. We got NBA playoffs continuing as well, evening it up. Cavaliers against the Celtics. Cavaliers taking game 2 to tie that up. The Mavericks taking game 2 to tie that series up at 1 apiece. You've got the Rangers, who are now out to a 3-0 lead against the Hurricanes, against the Carolina Hurricanes in the Stanley Cup playoffs. 3-0 lead. Another overtime game last night. The Stars, they've evened up their series against the Avalanche with a 5-3 victory last night. For Timberwolves fans out there, probably anxious to get to game 3. It seems like it's been a hot minute. It's been a while. Well, we will, excuse me, we will have game 3 coming at you tonight at Minnesota. Minnesota's up 2-0. Can they go up 3 and really put the defending champs, the Denver Nuggets, on the ropes. There's a big game tonight. Minnesota is favored. And then you've got the Knicks traveling to Indiana to take on the Pacers. Pacers are actually favored by 7.5 in that game too. So, also with the Stanley Cup playoffs, you got Florida at Boston. That series is tied at 1 apiece, and then Edmonton at Vancouver. Vancouver leading that series 1-0. So we'll make those picks and predicts at the back end of the program about 8:45, 8:50 this morning. So let's pitter patter and let's get at her, shall we? Let's start to roll things here. Coming up on the leadoff, we'll begin things talking a little Brew Crew. Brew Crew picking up a 7-1 victory last night. By the way, Twins also wrapping up their series against the Mariners, scoring 11 runs to get that win. But the Crew picking up victory in Game 1 of their series against the Cardinals. William Contreras and Bryce Terang, or I should say Bryce Terang and William Contreras, kind of turning out to be a nice 1-2 combo up there. I don't know if you were watching or listening to the broadcast. I ended up turning on the broadcast just for like the last for maybe like 10 minutes or so last night, and I heard Rock throw out a comparison between this 1-2 combo right now. It's only been a couple games, but Terang and Contreras, he threw out a comparison of Paul Molitor and Robin Yount. Paul Molitor getting on, Robin Yount getting him in. Bryce Terang gets on, he steals, Contreras hits him home. Probably a little too early, but ideally that would work out, right? I mean, it just the way Terang's been getting on base and then stealing, getting an extra base, the way Contreras has been hitting, 3 hits again for him last night? You plug in Christian Yelich, if he can do what he was doing at the beginning of the year at that 3 spot, hey, no, maybe you got something cooking there. So, talk a little bit about that. We'll hit that up and then talk about the debut of Robert Gasser coming up tonight for the Brewers. So, get the conversation flowing. Hit us up with a text, 715-830-1912, or join in on the video chats, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, whatever one you want to hit up on. We'll take that first break and get things going here this morning. Lead off coming up after these quick words. Mother's Day's this weekend, so why not spoil mom and get her some Man Cave Light from Hy-Vee? How about that? Pick up some 4 packs of Man Cave Light and celebrate mom this weekend, and maybe grab some Dan Good Burgers over there. Fire up the grill. Haven't tried those yet? What the heck are you doing? You're missing out. So head on over to our good friends from Hy-Vee and maybe grab some flowers from the floral departments. You've got some gift cards. I mean, you could find something for mom over at Hy-Vee. Okay, and plus, right now, Hy-Vee's got their Midwest pork bundle sale going on. Pre-orders, accepting pre-orders now through the 12th. You only got a couple days here, so for I mean, there's more details on their Facebook page if you want to check it out. But for $2.59 half pork bundle, that's 10 to 16 ounce rolls of ground pork, 5 to 16 ounce rolls, or 10 16-ounce rolls of ground pork, 5 16-ounce rolls of Midwest Italian sausage, 5 16-ounce rolls of Midwest mild sausage. You've got some back ribs, St. Louis spare ribs, boneless pork tenderloin, pork steak, whole pork, butt roast, packages of sorted pork chops. I mean, there's more and more and more. And then if you double it, you can double your order and save some money over there too. So I mean, there's a big list. You want to get those smokers out. It's that time of year. The orders expecting order pickup starting about June 2nd over there. So hey, might be time for Father's Day to get the smokers going out there. So, but stop on by our good friends at Hy-Vee. Grab some Man Cave Light over there. Grab some Dan Good Burgers, and then go ahead and grab some flowers for the wife or for mom for Mother's Day this weekend. Holy moly, C-Bomb's actually texting in this morning. Contreras and Yelich are my cream of the crop. 6 of 8, 3 runs, 2 RBIs between the two. Directly responsible for 5 of the 7 runs yesterday. Fun to watch. G-Man, DK, way to go. Brewers last night and go win tonight. Brewers will sweep the Cardinals. Let's begin this morning talking about the Brewers and their win from last night. 7-1 victory. And when we were looking at it, Sonny Gray, he still is, but he was having a fantastic start to his season. His one loss was against the Brewers, but it was a quality start. Just didn't have enough run support in that loss. Well, Brewers went out there and attacked right away, putting up 3 in the bottom of the first, and they just kind of got the sense they didn't let off the gas, right? Sonny Gray ended up going 5 innings, 7 hits, 6 earned runs, and 3 home runs. Gave up. Did strike out 6. But it just felt like throughout the game, the Brewers had his number. And yet Contreras and Yelich, as C-Bomb noted, 6 hits. 6 hits between those two, and Yelich's second game back, getting the start in left field. Legging out that triple. That was good to see. And that apparently was a good test for him, too. See how the back held up, and he says he feels good. But, Terang had just 1 hit at the top there, stole that base. I mean, that's what we want to see. I mean, we saw it the other day when Terang hit a double, and then, Contreras hits a double, and you got a 1-0 lead right away. But how it happened last night, I know it was just a couple of at-bats, but if this is something we can consistently see throughout the season, the Brewers are going to be able to put up some runs here. Terang gets on, you steal. Contreras, the way he is hitting this year, I mean, now his average is up to a 340. Probably going to get him around. Odds are, chances are pretty good that you're going to get him around. And you're out to a 1-0 lead. Like Rock said last night, it was kind of reminding him a little bit back in the day. Paul Molitor and Robin Yount. Now, those are 2 Hall of Famers and 2 of the best to have ever played for the Brewers. And it's only a couple games there. But that would be an awesome scenario if it were to turn out that way. And then you got Yelly hitting in the 3 spot, 333 with a 1.115 OPS. If he can be consistent, if this is the top 3 here, and if they can continue to hit and get on base, produce runs, score runs, that's a solid top 3. I know it's still fairly early in the season, and averages maybe a little skewed, and OPS is maybe a little skewed right now, but so far, Terang 314 with an 816 OPS. Contreras 340 with a 931 OPS. And I already mentioned Yelich's 333 with a 1.115 OPS. Bryce Terang right now has 15 stolen bases. 15 stolen bases on the season. I know we keep hitting this and talking about this and such, but it's something that I think a lot of Brewers fans have been asking and wanting to see for a while now, to see the team be a little bit more aggressive on the base paths. And we're seeing that. Terang isn't leading the league anymore. It's Ellie De La Cruz from Cincinnati, and it's 23-15. But it's De La Cruz, and it shouldn't surprise a whole lot of people he's up there at number one. When you look at it from a team perspective, Brewers are third in the majors in total stolen bases. Cincinnati's at 64, Washington's at 62. And it kind of drops there a little bit. Milwaukee, 49. When we look at last year, Milwaukee finished just outside the top 10 in stolen bases. They were 11. They had 129 total stolen bases. And so far this year, they've already got 49. And not even through the first quarter of this season. But man, I hope this top three of a Terang and a Contreras and a Yelich can be something that consistently is going to produce at the top of the lineup there. And I think it can. You know, maybe a little bit of a question mark in the cleanup spot. Willy Adames is there. He's been displaying some pop this year. You got Rhys Hoskins there. I mean, right now you're kind of like, how do I want to say this? I mean, you're not going to probably get a 300 hitter in that cleanup spot. It's going to be a lot of pop and a lot of power there, and maybe some strikeouts like Yelich was last night, or excuse me, Adames. But that top three so far, I like it a lot. And I mean, 4-5. I mean, if it is Willy Adames and it is Rhys Hoskins, they're displaying a home run ball. Hoskins has 8 so far this year, but Adames has 7. So, I mean, they're kind of Hoskins is coming in and pretty much doing, I think, what we all expected, is to bring a little bit more power to that lineup. Tonight's going to be an interesting start for the Brewers. We're going to see Robert Gasser, the number 5 prospect in the Brewer system, make his major league debut tonight. Pat Murphy saying, I'm excited for sure. We told Goss in spring training before, because he did have an injury, you're going to pitch in the major leagues, so prepare for your debut. There's some swing and miss there. There's poise. There's a good repertoire that I think matches up against righties and lefties. He was acquired in that 2022 trade deadline deal from the Padres, full reliever Josh Hader. So we're going to see him make his debut, and we'll see how long potentially he can stay with the ball club. I mean, he goes out there and performs and has himself a pretty darn solid game. He's probably going to get more opportunities. Probably going to get more starts. I know it's kind of putting a lot on his major league debut and a start right away, but I think, if you're a Brewers fan that's been kind of following along and maybe know a little bit about some of their minor league players, AAA players, you're kind of excited to see Goss and maybe get a glimpse of potentially what the future could be for the starting pitching staff, because, right, no more Burnsy, Woodruff maybe a couple more years here, Wade Miley, we'll see. It's kind of the next wave. Freddie Peralta leading that charge. Aaron Ashby maybe being a part of that still in the future. I think he still is. DL Hall, and then Goss. I mean, those are probably the four of these starting pitchers that the Brewers are really hoping are kind of the future of their rotation for the next few years. So we're going to get a glimpse of that starting tonight. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see him get his chance. Brewers are going to be going up against Lance Lynn, who, back with the Cardinals this year, part of that signing this offseason of the Cardinals signing some veterans to their starting rotation. And you've got a few Brewers who have double-digit few games experience against him. Willie Adames, 12 at-bats, just 167. Bowers, though, has 10 at-bats against him, and he's hitting 500 with a 1.345 OPS. Sanchez, 10 at-bats, 400 with a 1.300 OPS, including a home run. Yelich has the most experience against him, couple home runs, 18 at-bats, 222. First pitch for tonight's game will be at about 7:10. 7:10. So I'm excited to see this game tonight. Watch this game tonight. Listen to this game tonight. I think there's a lot of intrigue into it. Brewers currently right now in the standings because the Cubbies did not play, but the Brewers holding on to a half-game lead over the Cubs. Brewers 22-15, Cubbies 22-16. Cubs begin a series against the Pirates tonight. So, all right, let's take a quick break here. I want to talk a little football just to kind of wrap up the first hour here. But yesterday, we got to hear from some defensive position coaches. Plus, we got to hear from Rich Bisaccia. And I kind of want to hit that up too, because if you remember the kickoff rule, it's changed, right? One of those no votes, though, came from Green Bay. If you remember when the owners' meetings and they voted to change the kickoff rule, which would allow for more returns, you would think a team like Green Bay with Keyshawn Nixon would be in favor of that. Green Bay was one of those teams that voted no. Why? Rich Bisaccia gives us a little insight on that, because I think it kind of caught a lot of people off guard. It's like, whoa, Green Bay's had 2 years in a row the all-pro returner. Here you got a rule now where it's going to allow teams to return the ball more. Why wouldn't Green Bay want that to happen? So Coach Bisaccia addressed that a little bit yesterday too. But I want to talk about Devontae Wyatt, because when we talk about this defense, we've talked about individual players and the defense as a whole, but I think this is a big year 3 for Devontae Wyatt coming in. Will this defense be set up for him to have a successful year? Let's talk about it. Coming up, if the computer wants to work. There we go. All right, quick break. We'll be back to finish up the first hour after these few words. Getting ready for another busy travel season, vacations, taking our kids to all their games, tournaments, and such. You need to make sure you have a proper vehicle to get to where you're going in safely. That's where Toyson Ford can help you out. Toyson Ford will go the extra mile to provide you with compelling options for new and used car shopping. They will gladly work with you on financing no matter what your budget may be. They're committed to giving drivers across the Chippewa Valley the best in customer service. Check them out for yourself. Visit Toyson Ford today at 1000 Chippewa Crossing Boulevard in Chippewa Falls and visit them online at toysonford.net. Also, quick reminder, too, if you haven't sent over your photos for the Tilden Gun Trophy Gallery up at our website, sportstalk1051.com. Let's click on the Outdoors tab over there. Send me those photos so I can put them up there, a little brag board action. All right, whether it's you're having some success with the fishing season going on right now, or you lucky turkey hunters, if you're able to bag a gobbler, send those on over so we can do a little bragging for you. All right. It's our trophy gallery presented by Tilden Gun, our good friends at Tilden Gun. Check out tildengun.com. Biggest selection, best prices in the Chippewa Valley. All right. I want to talk a little green and gold here to wrap up the first hour already this morning. So last couple days we've been hearing from position coaches for the Packers and coordinators. And yesterday we got to hear from the defensive position coaches, and we got to hear from Rich Bisaccia. I want to start off with Rich Bisaccia, special teams coordinator for the Pack, because when that new NFL rule came down where they're changing the kickoff rule, which would essentially allow for more returns. They want the return back in the game. One of the teams to vote no was the Packers, which I think surprised a lot of people because you have Keyshawn Nixon, who was named All-Pro returner the last 2 years in a row. So you got a rule where it allows more returns or really tries to enforce more returns, promotes more returns is probably the best way to say it. Why would Green Bay vote no? Rich Bisaccia kind of addressed that yesterday, and essentially what he wanted to see was testing the rule out in preseason before making a radical shift. This was his quote, courtesy from Ryan Wood on Twitter. I was really excited and proud to be a part of Mark Murphy and Matt LaFleur voting no from the perspective that I have as a special teams coach for a long time. So I was excited for that. We had a lot of conversations about it, them going into the meeting. So being a longtime coach, I loved kickoff. It's one of my favorite plays. In the ability, it becomes a 3-level defense. Your speed players, your read players, and your fit players. I just loved all that. And when there's a great return and it's a double team and a kick out and it looks like a power play on offense and you see that hole open up, it's a wonderful play. So all that being said, I do miss all that. I miss the practices of how that's being practiced and how that's being facilitated from the return portion of it and what it did to a certain degree for bottom level players on a 53-man roster who were able to play and make a living for a long time. Okay, so all that being said, I am excited about the new part because it's just a part of our personality. I'm glad that the play is still in the game, right? That we're not losing the play. So hopefully we're not going to lose those players and you're not going to lose your livelihood as a coach. So I'm excited about the play and it's radical. So let's see how good we are, all right? We're all doing the same thing and let's see how it's going to look as time goes on. Also yesterday, we as I mentioned, we heard from some position players. Derek Ansley, who is the pass game defensive coordinator, former defensive coordinator with the Chargers. But he said Jair, a lot of talk about Jair, and I get it, how the season ended last year, personality and such. But he said Jair arrived a couple weeks before the offseason program and has seen nothing but his best. He's leading that group the right way. Said him and Xavier McKinney apparently sit next to each other in meetings all the time and that. But one player in particular I kind of want to talk about is Devontae Wyatt, because we've talked about different levels of this defense. We've talked about the defense as a whole. We know it's changed. We've talked about the safety. We've talked about the corners, the mentality, the linebackers, Rashawn Gary, Preston, Lucas Van Ness putting their hand in the dirt and such. We've even talked about Kenny Clark. But how big of a year is this for a guy like Devontae Wyatt, a first-round pick from just a couple of years ago? Didn't see much from his rookie year. Saw some glimpses last year, but I would say it's fair to say probably not enough for, first round pick in it. So with this change, will we see maybe a better version of a guy like Devontae Wyatt? Packers defensive line coach, Jason Rebovich, kind of, first of all, compared this defense or the defensive line to what San Francisco and Houston does. Says similar systems to this, quote, it's an attack front. It's about tackles for losses and sacks. We're going to look to create penetration into the backfield. Now, when it comes to Devontae Wyatt, he believes this new scheme will produce a, quote, great outcome for Devontae Wyatt. He said the thing about Devontae Wyatt, he's quick, fast, and athletic. So you're going to have to develop things around him to use those attributes. Devontae Wyatt, in my opinion, is heading into a very critical big year for him. And I know it's a change in defense, and maybe, more times than not, you give the benefit of the doubt, adjusting it and such. But heading into his third year, maybe the guy just was not a fit for a 3-4 style of defense. That easily could be said. That easily could be the case. That he just isn't for a 3-4. And, I mean, you look at his size and you're like, "Okay, yeah, does he really fit as a 3-4 defensive end sort of thing? Is he is he better suited for a 4-3 defensive tackle?" And I believe he is, but it's up to Devontae Wyatt to prove that. We've talked about how this defense could benefit a guy like Kenny Clark, and I think it could benefit a guy like Kenny Clark. But with that also benefiting Kenny Clark, I think that in turn also benefits Devontae Wyatt. When you look at it, if we did a little bit of a depth chart right now for Green Bay, it's probably gonna look like, if we do base front here, Rashawn, Kenny, Devontae, Preston, Lucas Van Ness. Yeah, I'm kind of putting those 2 as half there because it'll be a little bit of rotation. On paper, that's a solid front, but the thing is we haven't seen those guys kinda play in a front like that in a 4-3 front. We've seen Kenny and Devontae, hands in the dirt. And then Rashawn and Preston, standing up in a two-point stance and rushing the passer from that. But when I see this, I look at this as an opportunity for Devontae Wyatt to maybe really showcase his skill set and why Green Bay drafted him as a first-round pick. He's a twitchy guy. He's got some speed to him, and if he's playing next to Kenny Clark here, this is an advantage for Devontae Wyatt that he has to just take it by the horns and run with it. I think this is a defense now, from everything we've heard, from everything we've learned philosophically, this is a defense that is going to suit a player like Devontae Wyatt a lot better. It's gonna be up to the player now to take advantage of that. He's gonna have opportunities. I really believe that. I believe he's gonna have opportunities to be a force on that defensive line, to be an aggressive defensive line. And that's the other thing. We're hearing this mindset of an aggressive defensive line, which is something different than what we have seen in a while for Green Bay. Because a lot of the times it was, all right, your defensive lineman, probably just kind of clogging up some holes or taking up the blockers and freeing it up for those linebackers. That's not going to be the case for this year. They're kind of unleashing this group. They're unleashing, like saying, go get that quarterback, get in the backfield, make some plays, and take down the ball carrier. It's like just it's almost like if I'm one of those guys, if I'm like Kenny Clark or if I'm Devontae Wyatt, and I'm hearing this, I'm like, I've kind of built this up, this energy up, and I get to like unload it. I get to play fast. I get to play aggressive. I'm ecstatic about that. I'm pumped about that. I was like, let's go. So I think this is heading into his third year. And I know we focus a lot on his fellow rookie and his fellow college teammate Quay Walker and the type of year, he's moving to a little bit more of a weak side linebacker. Everybody's kind of curious to see how he transitions to that. Don't don't forget about Devontae Wyatt though either, because I think one, he has to have a solid year. He's more than solid. He's got to have a good year. You're a first round pick. And I think he is a guy that when you look at it was probably put in a position where he wasn't best utilized. Now I think he's gonna be put in a position where he's gonna be better utilized. I can't wait. That's one of the guys that when we get to games and we get to, practices and such, I'll be excited to watch Wyatt and see the effect because last year at preseason and training camp, and this might be a cautionary tale here. Last year at preseason training camp, Wyatt was one of those guys that was flashing in practice. He was making plays. We kept hearing that from the reporters, right? Wow, he's really showing off some speed. He's beating his block. But then when it got to games, okay, a couple plays here, but maybe wasn't on the field enough. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I think he's going to get more opportunities. He better get some more opportunities. And that's not to say don't throw out, Colby Wooden and Carl Brooks because they had, some solid moments last year too. But this is a big year for Wyatt to really showcase and display why he was a first round pick, why the Packers made him a first round pick. And if he's going to be lined up next to Kenny Clark the majority of the time, I think he's going to have an opportunity to really showcase his athleticism and his speed and wreak havoc on that defensive line. And let's face it, the Packers defense needs him to do that too. This is going to be a defense where it's going to start up in the trenches now. A little bit more old school, which I'm all for. Games, in my opinion, are still won with offensive line and defensive line play. Winning in the trenches. And if Green Bay can set the tone with some solid defensive line play, that's going to make the job a whole lot easier for Cooper, Walker, Alexander, McKinney, everybody on the back end. It's going to make it that much easier. All right, coming up next hour, we're going to kick off next hour with a little inside the training room with Dr. Croach Babelli, orthopedics and sports medicine. Mentioned it the other day, but Wade Miley, a little bit of a different type of procedure with his Tommy John surgery, allows him from my understanding, a little bit more of an aggressive rehab process, hopefully to return a little bit sooner. So we'll talk to Dr. Crow about that, get his thoughts on that and such. After that, we'll catch up with our good buddy, Brandon Berg, sports editor of the Chippewa Herald. We'll talk some Brewers with him. Brewers picking up that win last night And then looking ahead to tonight starts with one of the highly touted prospects in this system, in the farm system for the Brewers, Robert Goster. So we'll get Brandon's thoughts on that, and he'll give us a little bit of a preview or scouting reports, if you will, on Goss there. So we'll hit that up, plus a little local sports rundown brought to you by Albertson's Appliance Center with them. Send us your cream of the crops. Who's your cream of the crop? Play along with us, all right? Send those puppies on over. Hit us up with a text, 715-830-1912 on that Shoe Doctors bullpen line. Also do a Carpet City Flooring Center local spotlight too. Brandon will make that pick a little bit later on. So we'll hit that up. Probably throw in a little hoop stock playoff. Timberwolves back in action tonight. Can they get a game 3 victory and really put Denver on the ropes? Can the Timberwolves go up 3-0 in this series against the defending champs? It was huge that the Timberwolves took those 2 wins on the road in Denver. Huge. Series now comes back to Minnesota. Game 3 is tonight, along with Indiana and New York. And I'm always curious when it gets to this Indiana New York game is going to be curious to me because with all the talk about officiating from Indiana's side of things and Rick Carlisle, going out in the media and criticizing the officiating and such. I'm always curious when we get to these scenarios because okay, the next game, how is it called? Is there a noticeable difference in how these games are called? You know what I mean? Like I'm always like makeup calls, makeup situations. We see that in games sometimes where it just seems a little obvious. But I'll be curious to see if we kind of get that situation with the series moving back to Indiana. How is it kind of compared? How is the officiating going to be in this one? So that'll be kind of curious to follow with tonight's game too. Stanley Cup playoffs also continuing tonight, so we'll probably dabble into that a little bit over there too. So Uh, again, a quick reminder, I'm gonna be out for about an hour at about 7:45 to 8:45, but, Luke will be filling in for me, and Brandon will still be here too. Just gotta run over to, Hudson School for a quick event. Should be back for the picks and predicts at the end of the, program there too. So, a little bit of a change, a little bit of a sub, if you will, but, just to give you a little bit of a heads up over there. So, shot clock's gonna cut me off in a minute here. Join the convo on the video stream. Hit me up on your thoughts on, do you think this is a big, crucial year for Devontae Wyatt entering his 3rd year? Former first-round pick, new defense. It's a 4-3, maybe better suited, putting him into a position better to succeed. Do you think this is a big year, a crucial year for Devontae Wyatt? And then hit me up with your thoughts on the Brewers. Maybe a new 1-2 punch. Bryce Terang and Mr. Contreras. 1-2 at the top of the lineup there. Terang getting on base, stealing a base. Contreras hitting them home. And then you got Yelly hitting in that 3 spot too. That ain't too bad. All right. 1 in, a couple more to go. We got some news updates, and then we'll be back to kick off the second hour with a little inside the training room coming up after these few words.
86.5 million acres to soybeans and get a crop averaging 52 bushels an acre. That would be our biggest soybean crop in the past 3 years and leave us with ending stocks of about 432 million bushels, the most in the past 5 years. But maybe the most interesting numbers for grain traders will be updated estimates on the size of the crops in Brazil and Argentina. March cheese production across the state and nation was up slightly from both February and a year ago. Nationally, production reached just over 303 million pounds, with Wisconsin producing 1.226 million pounds in March. One of the significant differences in the report shows that Gouda production was up over 41% from last year, while brick and Munster output fell by almost 12%. The report also shows that Wisconsin now produces more Italian varieties than the previous leader, California. It also shows Wisconsin leads second place California by about 89 million pounds a month in total cheese production. Idaho is now ranked third, and New Mexico fourth in cheese output. And that's a look at some farm news. I'm Jill Welke.
Hi, Tom Stryker for Post Glass and Mirror. A company like Post that does great work appreciates great workers. You can join the team and be appreciated in the office for customer service and scheduling, full-time or part-time. If you're more hands-on, work with Post as an auto glass tech or installing windows and shower doors as a commercial and residential glazier. Your competitive pay is based on experience, and they'll train you if you're the right fit. Do great work for a place that's great to work and is an equal opportunity employer. PostGlassandMirror.com.
And now, a list of things from Progressive Insurance: home, auto, boat, motorcycle, RV, ATV. Progressive protects them all. Learn more about bundling at Progressive.com. That's Progressive.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, sports aficionados and armchair quarterbacks, welcome to the Dan Kasper Show, where sports passion meets expert analysis. Dan's encyclopedic knowledge and infectious passion for all things sports is both impressive and sad.
I have many leather-bound books.
So get ready to laugh, cheer, and maybe even facepalm a few times.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
It's the Dan Kasper Show.
Second hour kicking off right now on this Friday morning, May 10th. Appreciate you all tuning in wherever, however you're going to be or however you're tuning in. Brandon Burr is going to be joining us here in just a little bit. We'll talk some Brewers with him and also do a little local sports roundup. We'll get back to some more of your texts and your comments on the Shoe Doctor bullpen line. But we kick off this hour with our doctor, Dr. Austin Crow, Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, for a little inside the training room.
Paging Dr. Crow. Breaking down the latest in sports injuries. It's time for Inside the Training Room with Dr. Crow. On the Dan Kasper Show.
He is Dr. Austin Crow, Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. Morning, Doc. How you doing?
Fantastic.
Hey, I want to lead things off talking a little Wade Miley with you. So we know Wade Miley had to go under Tommy John surgery, but Brewers.com a couple days ago had an article up there where that the surgeon was, quote, super happy with Wade Miley's hybrid elbow procedure. So I guess first thing, I know I sent you the article and such, but what can you kind of give us a little bit of a background or maybe basis? What is this hybrid surgery that they're talking about?
Yeah, so we talked about it when we first talked about his injury, about the main options in with treatment of UCL injuries, which is of course what the Tommy John surgery addresses. So if it's a partial tear, often we go in and do what's called a repair. So we're leaving the native ligament. We're basically putting anchors on each side of the joint. So one in the humerus, one in the ulna. And we basically anchor that back down, and we're able to kind of suture and pull native ligament. So we keep the ligament. That's called a repair. The other option is what, the true Tommy John surgery, which is a UCL reconstruction. We harvest the tendon, usually one from the forearm, and then we drill tunnels and we loop it through and recreate it. Well, this is a hybrid. So it uses both techniques. So you'll basically do the reconstruction. So you'll drill the tunnel, put in the new graft. Additionally, you'll basically back it up with this hybrid fixation. So you put in one of those quote unquote internal braces. Now that's a brand name. So it's Arthrex is the company that makes it. So I'm sure they love that everyone's kind of using it their name. Any company that has an anchor can do it, but this one is kind of special because there's some special properties to the suture. Long story short, it has the benefit of a complete reconstruction if the ligament's fully torn and you don't think a repair is possible, but it does back that up because normally we basically either have sutures tying it down to these little, what are called interference screws holding it in place. The internal brace creates a much stronger construct to allow earlier rehabilitation. So the thought is, and studies have proven it, that you can get these guys back throwing faster. So it is a little more technically challenging because you're both putting in tunnels and you're putting in anchors. So you kind of have to dance that a little bit. But when it works well, it seems to work very well for these pitchers. And so I do think that that's going to be kind of a more common procedure. Again, especially some of these studies in the last couple of years have come out and shown the outcomes of doing reconstructions with the repair. So the quote unquote hybrid procedure.
So that's kind of what my next question was going to be for you is if this is something that's, allows maybe guys to throw quicker or get back quicker, could you see this being maybe more of the norm procedure when it comes to a Tommy John surgery?
I do think that that'll probably catch on. Now, I mean, like a lot of things, when technology first comes out, so like these newer implants, it catches a lot of people's attention. It's not uncommon for a first study or two to show a difference, and then later studies refute that. So unless we see a change in the data, though, I suspect you are going to see a trend going towards that. So, I mean, that's what we try to do as surgeons is we try to follow what the data tells us to do. There's an art to medicine always. So people don't fit into a box. So it's not like you can take a patient and always say, this is exactly the right treatment plan for them. You always have to take a look at all the variables. But as a whole, when we have a problem, we always try to say, look, is there a study that tells us this is going to be more successful versus that? And then we try to make our decisions based upon that. So as of now, it does look like that's likely going to be an opportunity to have the similar success rate with a faster recovery, which obviously is ideal because then you're not, because if the faster recovery caused the higher failure rate, that trade-off may not be worth it. But if you have similar success rate with a faster recovery, that clearly, especially with a pro athlete, I mean, it's not that we don't care about high school and college pitchers, but when these guys are doing it for a job, it's certainly pretty important for them to get back out there and make a living.
So this might be a stupid question because when I hear brace and faster recovery, I go back to, hate to bring him up again, Aaron Rodgers and Achilles, because didn't he have like a brace or something like that with his Achilles injury that was
well,
supposed
it's
to be
funny you mentioned that. The exact same company is Arthrex. They're very good at marketing. So yes, so basically that it's the same concept. So it's the same suture that's used. But yes, it is in the same fashion where you anchor something in to back up the repair. That's what that speed bridge is. That's what that's called. And so that's the same concept is that with that repair is that in addition to the sutures holding the tendon, now Achilles is virtually always an actual repair. The difference is you also pull a set of sutures down and anchor it into the calcaneus or the heel bone to back up the fixation. So in some regards, it is similar to the hybrid technique where you're doing, in this case, a reconstruction, you're augmenting or backing it up with this anchor tape construct, which is again similar to what Rodgers had in Achilles. So that one has not been studied nearly to the same extent as far as accelerated recovery. So that's why you don't have a hat to hang on with like, yeah, he'll get back a lot faster. I mean, in theory, does it make sense? Yes, but there's also even these guys. I mean, it's not like these pitchers are getting back in a couple months. I mean, it's still a long recovery. So it's going to be faster, but it's still a long one. And that's why when Rodgers was saying, yeah, I'll be back in, what was it? I think at one point he said like 6 or 8 weeks. I mean, it was just like
Thanksgiving, I think he said. Yeah.
Yeah. It was more or less laughable.
Yeah, no kidding. So this is going to be a really dumb question, but brace, so like brace and quicker recovery. Is there like any, maybe looking into the future, maybe they've tested this, I don't know, but ACL injuries, is there something that could be something similar to that? Or is it just like the anatomy doesn't work for a knee injury?
You're a lot smarter than you think. That actually is something that's out there. Yeah. So, and guess what? It's Arthrex again. So the studies on that are definitely not as solid. So there is debate on that. So the company is a proponent of it. So they recommend doing it. So with their ACL reconstructions, they recommend putting one of those braces across it. So you have your ACL graft and you put the suture across it. The studies have not borne out the data quite as well. And so most of us are not doing that. I'm sure there are select few surgeons out there that are doing it, but for the most part, but absolutely there is an implant that is designed to do exactly that. So that was not a dumb question at all.
Interesting. So, I mean, is the common thing here just it's a brace and anchor points?
Yeah, exactly. The idea is that you're taking a something that you're repairing or reconstructing, and that's always a weak link. So you're getting tissue to heal in, and it takes a while. It's biologic. So what do you want to do? You want to support it during that phase. And so that's why the concept is there a way that we can quote unquote back it up, or as they have dubbed it, and obviously clearly their marketing team knows what they're doing, an internal brace. So it's a brace on the inside. You don't have to wear a brace on the outside because the brace is inside. So whether that's across the elbow, whether that's across the Achilles, whether it's across the knee, those are all concepts that are, and they do make sense. I mean, logically, you're like, well, geez, if I put a graft in there and I can back it up with this really strong suture, like, doesn't that make sense that it would support it? And the answer is, yeah, it does make sense. It just, things don't always bear out that way. So you want to, again, follow what the data tells us. And again, on the ACL internal brace, the data is not quite as good. The UCL, it seems a lot more promising.
Interesting. Dr. Crow, Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, joining us here this morning. Staying with the knee, but Mike Trout, we know one of the better baseball players out there, but he decided to have surgery to repair a torn meniscus in his left knee, as he thought it was a better alternative than postponing the procedure and being a designated hitter for the rest of the season. I thought it was interesting when he said he doesn't really know when it happened. He said the knee soreness worsened during an April 29th game. He said he kind of woke up and he had to ache, and then one day he couldn't walk. So he doesn't really know when it happened. But when it comes to is that kind of, I guess, similar to a lot of people with a meniscus, where maybe they didn't realize when they tore it or injured it, or is that not the norm?
It can go both ways. I mean, in younger athletic people, and again, I know Mike Trout's not a young baseball player, but he's still a young human being. So I'd categorize him as a younger patient. Generally, they do know. So it is a little atypical not to have an exact moment where they remember it. I mean, most of the time it'll be an athlete that comes in and says, I was playing soccer, I cut and pivoted, or someone rolled up on me, or I was playing football and my knee twisted, things like that, where they are like, something happened. It is not uncommon, though, to have someone who comes in and says, my knees are bugging me on and off, and so it definitely can happen. As we get older, so now you shift up into like the 50s, 60s, 70s, atraumatic meniscal tears are very common. And so on those patients, the debate is the meniscus tear, even the cause of the symptoms, and that's a whole other topic. But in this setting, I guess a little atypical, but not unheard of. Certainly, we definitely get people come in and say, I don't know. I think most of us believe what likely happens. They had a small tear from a smaller injury that was maybe mildly symptomatic. And I mean, let's be honest. I mean, these athletes, I'm sure they have aches and pains dang near everywhere, right? So it's just like, my knees a little bummed out. They're getting icing treatment. And then something happens and it takes it from small to medium or medium to large, and all of a sudden becomes much more symptomatic, where it wasn't like an event. It just kind of happened. And so then they're not able to kind of pinpoint the exact origin. So either way, with a repairable meniscus tear, if it heals correctly, he should get back and be dang near 100%. Those surgeries tend to work very well. Now, healing rates are not 100%, so that doesn't always happen, but I would suspect that it should heal and get him back to being top-notch, which is certainly he has always been, in his career, one of the elite players in Major League Baseball.
Absolutely. Last question for you. It's more of kind of like, I guess, an opinion one, but I was hearing or listening to Dan Patrick the other day. It might have been yesterday or the day before. Kind of talk about, the Knicks, and I mean, those guys play a lot of it's like Josh Hart played 48 minutes, and that's kind of something they've done all year, where their starters are logging a lot of minutes. And the question that they were throwing out there, is this something that's sustainable? It's a little old school in that approach, but when you see these guys, maybe playing 48 minutes a game there and going back to a little old school there, is that different in the trends from what maybe you've witnessed or seen across any other sports league out there? Because we always talk about load management, and it seems like the Knicks are doing something completely different at this point.
Yeah, I mean, load management came from the NBA. I mean, that's where that term was coined. I mean, we see it in other sports now, but no one does it quite to the extent that the NBA does. So, but if you look historically, I mean, teams didn't always do that. I mean, think of how many minutes Jordan played back in the day. And now, obviously, he's elite athletes, shall we say. So I don't think everyone can follow in those exact footsteps, but I think if you look at it, if these athletes are able to tolerate it and are in condition enough, I mean, I don't think you're going to see a dramatic change in injury pattern or kind of overuse injuries, but I'm sure they're keeping their fingers on that pulse. So if these athletes are presenting with any of that, so a sore knee, sore Achilles, you name it, they're probably getting some, quote, load management. On the flip side, if they're doing well, they just keep pushing, which again, historically has been done in the NBA and other sports where they just push. So I guess I think it's probably case by case basis, but it has to have the right athlete in the right circumstance.
Mm-hmm. All right. How do you feel about your Timberwolves tonight? Game 3, 2 big road victories, man. Oh, goodness gracious.
I mean, against the reigning champs, do I really think that Jokic and Murray are going to have the kind of slumps they've been having? Maybe. I mean, I think the Timberwolves defense has playing a big role in that, so it's not just coincidental. But I'm afraid the Nuggets are going to get one. But man, the Wolves are playing great, and I'm high on them right now. So I think they win at least one of these next two, and then win the series.
I agree. I agree with you. So it's really fun to watch that team. I mean, it looks like it just seems like they were prepared for the series against the Nuggets too. Like they're giving them some unknown looks and such, and just kind of catching them by surprise.
Yeah, I mean, and the refs are letting them play. It's it is admittedly a lot of contact, but it goes both ways. I mean, you see that both those guys when they're, whether it's Ant driving or whoever, I mean, there's guys getting banged around and they're letting them play, which I think does probably play to the Wolves' favor because we're aggressive on defense. But I mean, we were the number one defense all season long, so it's not a coincidence that we're causing trouble for them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. He's Dr. Crow, Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. Dude, appreciate the conversation as always, buddy. Enjoy the weekend. Happy Mother's Day. Make sure you spoil the better half this weekend. We'll catch up with you again soon, okay, bud?
Yep, you as well. Take care.
You got it. Dr. Crow, Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine inside the training room. We'll take a quick break, really quick break here, and we'll get Brandon on here before I have to head out for just a little bit. We'll talk some Brewers after these quick words. Jumping right into it here, because just a quick reminder, about 7:45 to 8:45, I'll be out, but Luke's going to fill in for me for about an hour with our guy Brandon here. Got a school event for the kiddo I got to run to. So, but I want to talk some Brewers with you first. Okay. So tonight, well, first of all, recap last night's game. We did that well, we did a little bit earlier, but to recap last night's game, we saw the Brewers offense, 7 runs scored. What are you doing?
What?
I'm glad the video's watching right now so people can see what you're doing right now.
I am doing nothing, sir.
Yeah, okay. So you're in a mood today. How about that? Jeez, you're in a good mood. But the Brewers picking up a 7-1 victory last night. Bryce Terang and William Contreras at the top. I heard Rock a little bit last night because I just tuned in on the TV really quick just to catch a little bit. And he's like, this 1-2 is reminding me of Paul Mahler and Robin Yount. And I'm like, I love it. It's just a couple games, though. But I get what he's saying. Terrain gets on, steals, Contreras, the way he hits. It's a 1-0 Brewers lead right away. So high praise. But ideally, that's why you'd have that 1-2 punch to work out that way, right? Terrain gets on, he steals, Contreras, the way he hits all across the field, you get him across, right?
Yeah, I think that whoever is going to be that leadoff hitter is really important, given that they're hitting directly in front of William Contreras and Christian Yelich.
Mhm.
And there's a couple different people they've kind of tried at different spots. Obviously, Sal Frelick got a decent line share of that up there, and he's someone that he takes his walks, but the hitting just hasn't quite been there yet for him. So they tried someone else, and obviously Bryce Terang has been one of the best hitters the Brewers have had to start the year. And then you factor in the base running, especially the ability to steal bases at the top of the order. I mean, that's just kind of a natural fit.
Yeah.
When you can have someone with that speed in front of Contreras and now with Yelich back, I mean, they're going to love it because they got a guy that they know if they hit one in the gap, he's probably scoring from first base.
Right.
I mean, that's going to help. That's going to help them drive in runs. It's going to probably give them some better pitches to hit because opposing pitchers are going to be worried about Terang stealing bases, so they're going to want to throw more
right.
pitches that you can throw on if you're the catcher. So it's just when it's all clicking, that's kind of I think the ideal scenario. And at this point, I think Bryce Terang has earned that opportunity to hit the top of the lineup.
Right. Yeah. And then if Yelich kind of picks up where he left off, and last night he looked like it with even legging out a triple over there. I mean, I know it's still kind of early in that, but that's a pretty formidable 1-2-3 at the top, right?
Yeah, I think Pat Murphy said it, but I think it's really true that kind of the Christian Yelich return I think it kind of puts everyone in their best spot because everyone you looked at kind of the lineups when he was out and they had moments where they hit, but you could tell they missed him. I mean, he's a top 2 offensive player they have. Like you're going to miss that when someone's gone for a month,
right?
But slotting him in the 3 spot it kind of makes everybody better because then everyone behind you kind of moves a spot down. Adames moves a spot down. Rhys Hoskins moves a spot down. Whoever else. William Contreras has somebody that's directly behind him that he knows if teams can't just fully pitch around him because he's got someone behind him that can make him pay. It's just when you have someone of that caliber, especially with the way he's played so far this year, like it just makes everybody better because everybody kind of takes a little bit of the pressure off themselves because they know there's another highly productive person in there with them.
That cleanup spot, Adames, 7 home runs this year. Hoskins has 8 right now. You look at maybe some of the averages, about 250 for Adames and Hoskins a little bit lower than that. But I mean, at that spot, the 4-5 hitters, are they doing exactly, in your opinion, what a 4-5 hitter should be doing with that power and maybe not having the best or a high average like a Terang or a Contreras or a Yelich, but they're providing that power in that lineup?
I think that's what you want because ideally you want someone that can come up there and drive in a few runs. And certainly between those top 3, assuming going forward it's still Terang, Contreras, and Yelich, those are not only 3 guys that are hitting well, but they're 3 high on base guys. They're guys that'll take their walks. They're guys that are patient. So in theory, there should be runners on base often for the middle of the order. And then, you just want them to, I mean, that's kind of what Rhys Hoskins did last night, 3-run home run.
Right.
few days ago, Willie Adames had one in the win over Kansas City late,
Yep.
where you want people in that spot that can put up a crooked number.
Right. Do you think Sanchez should get more opportunities in the lineup? I mean, he kind of has been lately.
He kind of has,
but he's up to 5 home runs already.
Yeah. I think with Gary Sanchez, what you're going to get is you're going to get a guy that hits for some power. The average isn't really going to be there, and the on base really isn't going to be there, but the OPS is. Like, he makes when he does hit it, he makes the most of it. So yeah, I think at this point right now, I remember going back a little ways. I think maybe it was after the home run he hit against the Pirates against the Earl Stratton. He mentioned he wanted to get some more opportunities. It really seems like he's kind of done that since then. And if he can play a passable first base, that'll help his case as well. So yeah, I think he's right now he's worth, or he's earned getting some more opportunities, and I think he's started to get it.
It's a good problem to have though too, right? I mean, you got Contreras playing at the level he has, so you don't really want to sit him or take him out of the lineup. You got Hoskins, who's displaying some power. Obviously, Sanchez in his limited time has displayed that too. I mean, it's a good problem to have when you have that many different options.
Right. When you're the manager and you go in every day, or you're putting out your lineups, what you think you're going to have for the next few days, and you think, man, we just got a lot of guys that are hitting. I mean, I know some people have kind of been hoping Joey Ortiz would play a little bit more. With Oliver Dunn still getting a decent amount of starts against right-handed pitching, but Joey Ortiz is doing exactly what he needs to do to make that case. When he's out there, he's hitting, and he's playing good defense. So
he's growing a nice stash too.
He's giving her
thing, yeah. A little Tom Selleck action.
There
right
we
there.
go.
I like it.
So I think that's just kind of when people are hitting, it's pretty easy to make that lineup. When they're not, pretty much no lineup you put out there is going to suddenly unlock 7 runs a game. So
right. So tonight we get to see Robert Gasser, right? Getting his major league debut. He was a part of the trade that sent Josh Hader to the Padres, came back number 5 prospect in the Brewer system, left-handed pitcher. I think they've got, they envision big plans for him, right? As part of that next group of young guys in that rotation. What kind of pitcher is he? What should we maybe, I don't want you to say, well, this is what you're going to see tonight, because I mean, we don't know how it's, but what does he do well, or what is he really kind of, I guess, known for, or what's his best? What's he best at?
Well, left-handed pitcher, someone that pitched at AAA all last year, I believe, for the Brewers, and had a pretty good year. A little bit, banged up to start this year, so I think that's probably why he wasn't with the team already. But a guy that'll throw a bunch of different pitches. I mean, nothing, velocity is not going to wow you. It's lower to mid-90s, but fastball, cutter, curveball, changeup, slider. He'll kind of throw a little bit of a lot of different things, and he's a guy that tends to be around the zone. He's not walking too many guys. I mean, in this day and age, when you're throwing lower to mid-90s, that's kind of on the lower end of velocity seemingly, but still, I mean, he gets outs. He's got pitchability, so he knows how to pitch. I mean, he's not just going out there trying to blow smoke by people. So he's someone that's made a few starts, and this is, I think, kind of was the plan, and he's going to get that opportunity, especially with some of the injuries that there's been and stuff. There's an opportunity there, and it's going to be his time to see what he can do.
Would you put him, because I was trying to look at the next few years, projecting the next few years. Freddie might be the veteran of that group. Would you say Aaron Ashby, Robert Gasser, DL Hall, and maybe Mizorowski?
Yeah.
Would that be the 5?
Those are some. I think there's another guy, Carlos Rodriguez, who's in the minors right now. He's someone that you could see at some point, maybe later this year, because he's still a little bit younger than some of those other guys. But I think those are some of the ones you look for. Tobias Myers is getting an opportunity. The big thing for him, I think, anyone that's watched him so far can see is, you just got to keep the ball in the ballpark.
Right.
He throws strikes outside of, the start of that Cubs game, but, he's just, you got to, there's a difference between, control and command.
Right.
You got to be able to not only throw strikes, but throw good strikes. In the minors, you can get away with just, pounding the strike zone, but you kind of have a little bit more nuance to it in the majors. Otherwise, teams will take you deep.
I mean, I think I saw online the other day, there seems to be, and you've mentioned it before many times, but a little bit more attention on what Mizorowski's doing right now. I mean, there's some highlight clips out there too. I mean, he is the number 2 rated prospect in the Brewers farm system. Still Jackson. I mean, at
Yeah,
some point,
there's
it's
a
gonna
certain amount. Yeah,
change,
once you get a certain amount of like plate appearances or whatever, that kind of you lose your status as being counted on as a prospect, even though you're still a rookie.
Right, and he's in Double-A right now, I believe.
Yes, he's with Biloxi.
So he wouldn't make an appearance this year. I can't
doubt
see
it. I think he's probably more of a 2025 guy, just because he's a little bit younger still too. And with him, with Mizorowski, it's all about a lot. Like he throws hard. Like last year when he pitched in the Futures game, he really impressed because he was just going up there. He threw an inning. He was just pumping in, like 98, 99 mile-an-hour fastballs.
Man.
And for him, they just want to keep giving him innings because he's still wild. Like.
Yep.
So you want to try to smooth that out a little bit. So he's one of those guys that if he's not a starter, they think he can be a super high end, end of the back of the rotation reliever, but you want to give him a chance to be a starter because obviously that's that's the more ideal outcome.
Two guys I want to get your thoughts on. Are they two of maybe the more pleasantly surprising players so far for the Brewers this year? I'm talking about Bryce Wilson and Brian Hudson. With what Wilson being stretched out now as kind of a starter, right? With all the injuries there, and then now Hudson's favorite player, Hudson, because he saw the game last night. Somebody was wearing a Hudson jersey, but it was double zeros, and he's like, "Well, who's that number? Is that his number?" But he's 2-0 with a .84 ERA. Wilson being stretched out 2-1 with a 2.40 ERA. Are they at the top of that list in your opinion for guys who have really kind of stepped up to the challenge and surprised this year?
Yeah, I think those would be, two good nominations with Brian Wilson,
Bryce.
Bryce. Yeah,
Bryce.
Brian Wilson was the former Giants reliever.
Yep.
They seem to be in very different temperament from what I've seen. But with Bryce Wilson, yeah, he was a former starter, and then the Brewers kind of used him as a long reliever a little bit last year, and he was kind of the guy where if a starter went short, he would pitch 2 1/3 or whatever. But now, he's earned the right to be in the rotation, and he's pitched well. And Brian and Hudson coming over from the Dodgers, kind of a middle of the offseason trade that wasn't really talked about very much because there just wasn't as much to say. Brian Hudson's a guy that's struck out a ton of batters in the minors, but he got a little bit of an opportunity with the Dodgers. But obviously, the Dodgers have a lot of talent there, and he just wasn't able to kind of crack that group, and he got the opportunity in Milwaukee, and he's made the most of it. He's a gigantic man who doesn't really throw super hard for as big as he is, so I think that's a little deceptive. But yet he's very lanky, so
6'8".
You just got a bunch of arms and legs coming at you, so you can see how the extension can kind of mess with you if you're a hitter. And he's coming in throwing strikes. That's kind of been his big thing is. His strikeout numbers are down a little bit from what he was doing in the minors, which is to be expected. But the biggest thing is he hasn't been giving up free passes. He's come in there throwing strikes and just really put the pressure on hitters. And he's a guy that's capable of going multiple innings. So that's kind of a weapon where if you got a starter that goes 5 and suddenly Brian, Hudson gives you 2 innings, well, then suddenly you're in pretty decent shape.
One, and this might be a little projection here, but obviously there's a lot of talk about the offense of this team and their stealing bases and terrain and such. And they're 3rd in the majors right now in stolen bases. And, a lot of it is pointing to Pat Murphy, changing things up. But then on the same token, it's like, and then other people are like, well, they're just doing things there. He's got the same assistants essentially as Craig Counsell. Chris Hook is there on the pitching side, same hitting coaches as last year. So with it being the same assistants, do you think it's clear it's simply as it's just a change in philosophy from Pat Murphy to what Craig Counsell had in terms of maybe being aggressive on the base paths and stealing more bases and such? Or do you think it's just players are performing at a higher level so they're able to do Bryce Train's actually getting on base so he can steal more bases this year?
I can't say for sure. Obviously you can see the big difference just when the manager is different and something's different, that's the first place you're going to go. And that's not necessarily, I don't think it's not wrong to think that way, but it's just, we don't know because really early on in Craig Counsell's tenure, they stole a lot of bases. If you go back to 2015, 2016, there's a season where Hernan Perez stole 30 some bases. Jonathan VR early in his Brewers tenure stole a ton of bases. So it's not like Craig Counsell was always against it, but it did seem like the longer they got into his tenure, it became less of an issue. Now, in like 2018, 2019, it wasn't as necessary because you had a bunch of really good hitters. I mean, you had, Yasmani Grandal and Eric Thames, and obviously, Christian Yelich at the peak of his powers and stuff like that. Where when you're doing that, you don't want to run into outs on the bases, Mike Moustakas, Travis Shaw, etc. But it was something that in the last few years, when offense has been a little bit more of a grind for them, I was kind of wondering about, especially now when you've got this young athletic group. But to me, it's just, whoever's idea it is, it's a good one. Whoever it is, like, you've got all these young athletic players, like, utilize what they do best, which is be athletes. Go out there, run, steal bases, put pressure on the opposing defense.
Yep. Yeah. Maybe it's Ricky Weeks.
Maybe.
He 4 stolen bases in 1 inning against the Cubs. Settle down, man. What are you doing? But no, because I was actually looking at last year's stolen bases. Brewers finished 11th in team stolen bases.
Yeah, so it's
last
not
year,
like they were, not
honestly, it was a little higher than I thought they were going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not like they weren't. It's just, I think it's really been turned up this year. And I think part of that is just because you have a lineup with more guys that can steal bases.
Right.
And like you said, Bryce Strang's getting on base, actually. What do you do when you get on first base? Well, you can steal second base. You can't steal second base until you get on first base.
Right. So
and I think the thing, too, you're seeing is it's not just a couple guys. Like, at this point, Willie Adames is already almost at, like, his career high for steals. He's at, like, 7 or 8, something like that. Like, he's pretty much at his career high already. Like, you'll even see every once in a while Contreras or, like, Jake Bauers take a base if it, and that just puts so much pressure on the opposing team when like, any pitch, like, hey, they could be going.
Right. Really quick before we take a break here, Brandon's mom, morning packing up, getting ready for a fabulous Brewer game weekend. Let's go Brewers. We'll be sporting the new Brandon's mom jersey. Have a great weekend all. So bring back some W's, Brandon's mom. Bring back some W's. All right, we're going to take a quick break and then a little bit of a sub, if you will. Luke's going to hop on for about an hour. Take Hudson to school, and I got a school event there, and then I'll pop back in. We'll do some picks and predicts and such. So you'll get Brandon and Luke here for about the next hour or so. So let's take a quick break. These boys will be back in just a few minutes.
So we're live on the stream right now. Now you might be thinking, if you're listening and you're like, or watching, you're like, well, duh. I've never actually sat here in this chair for the stream, the video stream. So this means theoretically, if I bring up my Instagram account right now, I could watch myself on Instagram.
Good. You could have Luke Inception.
Yeah, that would be. Oh yeah, here we go. So we're live on the stream right now. Now you might be thinking, if you're listening and you're like, there you go, delayed audio. Awesome.
That's
okay.
actually pretty close, though.
It's not bad,
no,
really.
Like, it's not like a 2-minute delay.
Yeah, so here I am on there by the yes, and if you're watching on Instagram, that is my real name. So great. Now all the stalkers are going to show up.
Do you have stalkers?
No, I don't. I've done this for 23 years. I've not had a stalker yet. Because I mean it's Brady. I know. I don't know what's going to happen. I know. Well, if there's a place where there's going to be hot takes, it's going to be this. Like my other gig is saying, "Hey, here's aha." I mean, who's going to be like, "I'm coming to get you"? Like, no, like cool. Because I played another Steve Miller song. What?
Yeah.
Here it gets a little dicier because you could say something. Especially if you're a Vikings fan living in Packers territory.
Who would do that?
You got to be a little careful.
You got a little more wiggle room here.
All right, it's right. I mean, it's safety in numbers right now. No, folks, we are not going to break down.
No.
All of what's Brian Flores' scheme going to be for the next hour?
Dan is listening to this as him and Hudson are driving to school, and he is just pulling his hair out right now.
Oh, stop right there. But no, we're not good.
No.
I'd kind of with the schedule coming next week, which of course will be its own massive.
There was an announcement about the announcement. The NFL, that's the NFL for you.
Though, to be fair, it was kind of quiet up to that point. I was like, wait, is coming?
It was
this
kind of
week?
assumed, it was almost kind of assumed last night was going to be the night because usually it was on like a Thursday, like that, first or second Thursday of May, because obviously they want to get after the draft because you need to maximize visibility.
Of course.
Because you're the NFL.
Yeah. I was joking to one of our coworkers, Alex Edwards from Wax, after Goodell made his 18-game comment around the draft. Said, so here's NFL 21-24, 100 years from now. Every regular season game on prime time for about a 41-week season. So literally every night. Tuesday night football, Jaguars Titans. Sorry, I can't go to commencement. I gotta bet down on they won't be the Commanders by that time. They'll figure out something. The Giants Seahawks game, great, in June. So there'll be 41 weeks of regular season, then the playoffs, then the Super Bowl, then it probably won't be the combine. They'll just get rid of that. Then there'll be free agency. Then there'll be the draft, training camp, and then right into the next 41 weeks, and there'll be NFL every single day of the year. Which actually I think would water down the NFL and would not make it as popular.
I do too. I think I think part of what makes the NFL popular is it's not an everyday thing. Like I love baseball, but I can understand how, people have stuff going on. They're not going to be able to, every single day. Okay, well, how the Brewers do, how the Twins do, how whoever do. That's part of the allure of the NFL is, hey, I can carve out 3 hours a week for my favorite team. And hey, if I've got a little extra time, I can watch the game after it, but I don't have to make that much time.
Well, it's an interesting point that we're saying this because I've been thinking this occasionally. I'll listen to a Twins game, bring it up in CCO or something like that. And I'm like, however the game goes, there's a certain, the flow, the vibe of baseball has been talked about forever, but you feel it. If you're a baseball fan, you know it. Like, okay, so on we go to the bottom of the second. And I'm listening to that thinking, this is fun. This is good. Regardless of what happens, of course, the game counts. No, really, they need to win the game. They're not going to because no team's ever won 162 games. But life is good. I'm listening to baseball because you can feel decompressed because it's another part of the spring into summer or fall, and there's 162 of these. Plus, however many other games you want to listen to in the radio or watch. We got Brewers and Twins games on all the time around the area on the radio. Versus football, and I know they're all the primetime slots. There's not as many, so the stakes are higher. You feel more nervous or agitated or whatever because it means more.
Yeah, back before the NFL screwed it up, the little statistical formula we had were basically every 10 games for a baseball game was the equivalent of one football game. Yeah. 162 games in major leagues, 16 in the NFL. So it was roughly the same. But you're right, like, and that's probably what why the NFL is so popular too. Is you just if you lose opening day in baseball, it's like, okay, well, that sucks because it's opening day, but it's like, okay, well, you can still rebound, take the series. In the NFL, you lose week 1, you almost feel like the world's coming to an end.
Right. Well, I mean,
even though oftentimes it's not.
Same applies for soccer. Like, I think that's a big reason why I've become much stronger of an Aston Villa fan in the Premier League, even though I didn't become a fan till 2010, because every game means so much. There's only 38 of them. It's in that mid spot between the other leagues here in the US and the NFL. So you lose that one game or you draw that one game, all right, we might get relegated, or we might win or go to that, but by like 1 point. But it means the fractions are off a little bit more. So I think that's why soccer is as big as it is internationally. I think that's why the NFL and college football are as big as they are in the United States for those reasons, scarcity of product.
Right. And that's going to be interesting with college football when you see now with the 12-team playoff, like, is there still that sense of urgency? I think there will be.
That's an interesting point.
Because I mean, if you're a team and you lose, you can almost afford to lose a game if you're a Power 5 team. If you're in Ohio State or Michigan and Alabama, Georgia, whoever, like you can lose, but realistically, you probably could afford to lose a game anyway.
Yeah.
But if you're a fan of one of those teams that's, going to probably be battling for 7 through 12 in those playoff spots.
Cincinnati, just use a random example.
Right. Then suddenly there's a little bit more to it.
Mm-hmm. On the topic of scarcity in product, on the Bill Simmons podcast yesterday, was talking to Ethan Strauss, as a Substack, has been an NBA reporter. And we're talking about cutting down the length of the season, and that it's the sort of thing, like, nobody seemingly wants 82 games, but the money's there, so thus they can't cut it down. But it's one of those problems in sports. Like, nope, it sucks. But one idea, I think it was Strauss. I ended up subscribing to his Substack after this, so let's see, at least the free articles, of doing, if there was some way to cut the season down dramatically to like maybe 40 games, but you'd have like a clump of games midweek and then have like a Saturday game. Kind of NFL college footballize it. Scarcity of product. If you have more of those windows as opposed to a game every night, the regular season games, which that's the long haul right now, that a lot, I mean, and we've been following the Bucks a lot over the past few years because of their quality. Timberwolves more because of their quality. But it's easy to go through the whole season and then tune in March.
Oh, sure.
Or April. Well, that would change a lot because the games mean more. Where's the revenue streams? But would that increase the ratings, which have been going down in the NBA?
Yeah. You're going to have to balance it off because you're going from 41 home games or 39 with the play and whatever to 20, 23, whatever it would be. And yeah, I mean, owners will be watching that. Like that's a big thing for them.
I don't know how that's again, that was a radical concept, as they admitted, right. But something like that, especially now with this new NBA media rights deal, and still not finalized. We don't know what the whole NBC versus Warner TNT thing is going to be. How excited / nervous / ambivalent are you over watching the potential Bucks conference finals matchups on Amazon Prime Video?
Amazon. At this point,
every other year.
That's the direction it's going. And we've already kind of gotten a taste of that, and you knew that's kind of, basically if they could do a little bit of it and it wouldn't tank everything, but that's the direction it was going. Either you have it or you don't. I guess, for a lot of people, especially now that are cord cutters these days, it's not, I guess, what's the difference if it's on Amazon or if it's on, ESPN if you're a cord cutter?
Mm-hmm.
It's one way or the other. It's something you're not going with. So, yeah. I mean, it's just kind of a brave new world. Like, I remember when was the first year the Rose Bowl was on, like, ESPN?
Oh.
Because it wasn't too long ago. But I remember that being a really big deal. Because for a while, ABC had all of, they had all of, like, the main, the big bowls.
The 2010 season.
Okay, so that would have been bad. That would have been Wisconsin TCO.
Yeah, that was the first one.
That was the first one that was on ESPN, because otherwise it was always on ABC.
And it's been on ESPN ever since.
Yes. So that was, I mean, there's just kind of certain checkpoints we've kind of gotten to when it comes to media rights thing. I mean, obviously there was a time where everything was, for the most part was, on, your basic, I don't say basic channels, but you know what I mean?
NBC, ABC,
CBS, ABC, Fox, whatever. And, now that's not entirely the case. Like, you're seeing some simulcast stuff. And I think last year, in part because of like the strike and stuff, you saw like more Monday night games on ABC. Doesn't sound like that's going to be the case this coming year.
Because they don't
need the content. Like last year, that was a big reason why.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just the direction things are going, and people are going to be have to make the decisions they make, and obviously stations are going to have to adjust accordingly, because if you pay a ton of money for it and suddenly there's a big drop in ratings, that things are going to have to change. Like
ratings are ratings, and that's one of these big metrics. We're not going to know as much because of the way the streaming services are going on.
Yeah,
Netflix is taking away their subscriber numbers and stuff, at least publicly, I should say.
Right? Yeah, you're not going to be able to know the next day, hey, this was this drew this rating, because with a streaming service, you don't know.
That's been one of these cottage industries that's both annoying as heck and something that I always look up as soon as it comes out. Because we should not be judging the quality of something based on ratings.
Right. It should be how much entertainment you get out of it. But it matters. Like, especially as we've seen, like women's basketball and the tourney stuff, just how, mind-blowingly spectacular that was. And that was one where it was both product and result as far as ratings go.
It worked, and now you see where that's going. But you may not be able. This was another thing from that pod. You may not be able to believe the numbers as much anymore, because it'll be what the organizations are saying, without any transparency. All right, local sports roundup coming up after we have some local news from the 715 newsroom. Morgan McCarthy coming up in moments here. Dan will be back about 8:45. It's 8:04. Kasper is off for an hour. He'll be back about 8:45. He's got a kid thing going on right now. So he'll be back in a little bit. Brandenburg is with us this morning. Of course, we're taking your texts at the Shoe Doctor's bullpen line, 715-830-1912. We are live on the internet, video-wise. Hi. So you can watch us there while we're sitting here and chatting about sport ball, local sport ball. What's going on right now as we get, obviously on the collegiate level, we're very close to commencement, but the prep level, plenty more going on there. What's going on, Brandon? Do tell.
That's a very open-ended question because the short answer is a lot.
Yes.
Obviously, Tuesday kind of wreaked a little bit of havoc for many area teams with some of the weather. Not everybody, but most of them. So
looked cool in the sky, not good for playing on the ground.
No, and depending on where you were, there was a certain amount of accumulation. We got some hail in Chippewa.
Oh, that's always a good time when you can kind of bring the snow into May in a completely different way. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But teams got back. I mean, looks like the weather weather obviously last night was good. It's looking pretty good here going forward for a little bit. So that's going to help teams get things taken care of last night. Baseball in the Big Rivers, Eau Claire Memorial picking up a big win over Eau Claire North. Those two teams played Wednesday after their Tuesday game was postponed, and North picked up a win there in extras. So the big intra-city rivalry, there is a split there. So North is battling up at the top of the conference with Hudson. Got Chippewa Falls kind of waiting in the wings there a little bit. A couple big wins in the Western Clover Belt this week for Fall Creek. Their first year back as a varsity team in a few years. Otherwise, previous few years they co-opted with Black River Falls, but they're back right now, and they're currently in a decent spot up at top of the conference standings. They picked up two big wins this week over Bloomer, and those were two of the top three teams in the conference. So Fall Creek is going to enter next week with the opportunity to, maybe clinch that conference. While I think the Blackhawks are going to need to be big fans of Regis because Fall Creek and Regis are scheduled to play a few times. I believe that's next week. If not, it's the week after. Sometimes this year the baseball schedule is a little bit different in the Western Clover Belt because there's one fewer team because Thorpe doesn't have a varsity team. So. Mm-hmm. Instead of teams, all those teams playing each other on the same days, there's a built-in buy in there, and I don't always know who's on that built-in buy. So,
right.
But in softball last night in the Big Rivers, New Richmond picking up a big doubleheader sweep over Chippewa Falls. So the Tigers will enter the last week of the regular season with a chance to kind of control their own destiny for the Big Rivers title. They play Menominee though. Menominee's a solid team. They're in third place. So Chippewa Falls probably going to. As much as it may hurt them, they might have to be a little bit of a fan of New Richmond and then take care of their own business if they want to grab a piece of that conference title. Softball-wise, Fall Creek is wrapped up the Western Clover Belt. State ranked, they're also the number one team in that half of the Division 4 section where McDonald is the 2 and Colfax is the 3. So you figure some combination of those three teams, two teams likely is going to be your sectional semi coming up once the postseason gets underway, and that'll be not next week, but the week after. So that week right before Memorial Day is when softball gets underway. Mm-hmm. Track and field, we're kind of next week is the conference meet. So you got some schools that'll be running meets today. I know Cadot's hosting its annual William DeYoung invite. So that's always a big, home meet for them right before the postseason. But then Cadot also hosts the Western Clover Belt meet. So they're going to be, them and all the volunteers that are helping making those things runs are going to be pretty busy here coming up. But the Big Rivers meet is Monday, and that's in New Richmond. So, I mean, track, by the time we get to Memorial Day, we know who's going to state there. So that picks up for boys tennis in the Big Rivers. Menominee still on top of the conference there. You're going to have the conference meet coming up next Tuesday. And actually then that D1 regional and sectional, subsectional and sectional is both being hosted in Eau Claire, so all of our Division I local tennisers aren't going to have to go very far, which is always nice. I mean, yes. They'll be down at the Menard Tennis Center, which is obviously it's a great place to have it. Mm-hmm. And the good thing is too, rain or shine, you're going to be able to, which come this time of year, as we've already seen, is a big thing there. Mm-hmm. Golf's getting down to it. Eau Claire Memorial won the Rice Lake invite yesterday up in Rice Lake. Bloomer was third, then they came down and they finished first in a Western Clover Belt meet at Eau Claire Country Club. So we're going to have that coming up next week for conference meets. Next Thursday is the Big Rivers, and I believe that's at Whitetail in Menominee. The Clover Belt is Tuesday, and that's in Black River Falls at Skyline. And then, that's the same thing where the week before Memorial Day, you've got regionals coming up there. So, I mean, spring is always like, somehow it's both busy and not at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of depends weather-wise. But, we're hitting that prime stretch where if you're me or, your Justice or anyone that does what we does, you just kind of know, like, okay, you're just going to be busy. Like, especially in the week. Like, it's not so much like on the weekends like you will in like the fall and the winter where you've got, the playoffs, because none of the playoffs outside of soccer really do a ton on the weekends once you get to like state.
Yeah.
But you just know, like, it's going to be busy, and all you're really hoping for is you just get good weather.
Mm-hmm. Because I saw one of your tweets the other day that was like, "Hey, we're here, ready for the retweet." Postponed.
Never mind. Like, yep. That was a lot of people on Tuesday and with the timing wise too, you had a lot of teams and stuff that kind of got to where they were, and maybe even got like a half an inning in, and then suddenly just Mother Nature's like, nope, you're not. I'm not having it. She said
some heavy
accumulation of be it rain or, like I mentioned, we had some hail in Chippewa.
We got like 3/4 of an inch of rain at my place on the southwest side of Eau Claire. I'm like, dang, that was a lot for wave, and okay.
Yeah, I know in Chippewa, like at first, kind of like, because I was at Chai for a track meet at DeRay Field, and it's just like, well, it just kind of kept coming, and then there was more later. So it's just after a while, it's just kind of like you were kind of hoping it would just, maybe just a passing thing, and you can kind of work around it, but nope.
Kept regenerating, because I was looking at the radar like, oh, here it's coming again. It's one line, like, okay, it's the train of storms. So here we go. Who is, if you can assess at this point, with however many thirds of the season we're through at this point, the 2/3, maybe I guess might be the.
Sorry, I was cracking up because you talked about it being a train. I was going to try to make a meet Virginia crack, but
I mean, you could do a Drops of Jupiter one.
But I don't know. I just thought like Meet Virginia would have been.
That's a little deeper.
I also thought I could have fit that in there. See, I'm glad you're in here for that, because I feel like you would have got that quicker than Dan might have.
Oh yeah, he would have been like,
what?
I didn't.
And then he would have given me just this like sad look of like, what are you doing?
I mean, if you did something with Nelly, I'm sure he would have been like, not that he's a Nelly fan, but he probably would have been like,
I've dropped references he's gotten before, but I just figured that Train would be more up your alley.
It's a little bit more because it's, I've been playing Train songs on the radio for a very long time.
If I'm gonna drop something just way off the beaten path, I figure you're more likely to get it, just because. Oh, yeah.
Random.
As I gesture to one of the other studios where you will often be seen.
The pop realm, I tend to be a little bit more just by dint of, I'm coming up with all these words here, just because I've worked in pop radio a long time, so of course I'm going to know like the deeper dives.
Have you ever met Cyndi Lauper?
No.
Oh,
that would have been cool. Okay, granted, I've not met too many pop singers. Period. I see. Okay, now I don't know if I want to meet Cyndi Lauper, and I say that because there have been some indications that she's Cyndi Lauper and she knows it.
Okay. All right. Well, she would not be if that's the case, she would not be the first. She would not be the last.
Right. But not that she's bad either. Yeah. I think it would be pretty cool to meet her. Like I'm not turning it down. I'd be like a little nervous for the reason like
you just know like, okay, I gotta be on my P's and Q's.
Yes. I mean, I've met a few country acts because of Country Jam. So that's just the thing. Like you're standing around like, hey, we're gonna go back and do the thing at Country Jam, and oh, here's Dirk Bentley. Hi. He's got really soft hands, I noticed. I know that sounds like did you really need? Well, he plays.
Good to know.
That was something there. I did closest thing I think to a pop star I really have met, Kelly Clarkson. Nice. When she was at Jam in 2013. Nice. So I got to go backstage and meet Kelly Clarkson. I was like, wow. And yes, she is the type where I probably could have talked to her for 20 minutes. And I think anyone would have talked to her for 20 minutes on start with one topic, because she would just go. You see why she's doing a talk show now.
Right. Yeah. She just has that ability.
Dovetails perfectly with that. So thanks for the train. See, now the train reference did actually turn into something. Who could be, well, this is a tortured analogy. Take the train to Madison or La Crosse or wherever, or Eastern Wisconsin for state in whichever sport. Is there a person like track or a team that is jumping out enough now where you're like, these guys got it, or no one? Maybe it's all.
There's always going to be someone. But man, that like track, I almost feel like I don't want to go down that road because that's such an open-ended question. And the answer is yes. It's just a matter of who, and there's
that's a tough one.
There's so many.
There's not the Kenny Bednarik out there right now. Like
no, or even like last year, the Brooklyn Sandbag, where you're just okay, for sure.
Yep,
There's many that I'm like, oh no, I would be very surprised if they didn't. But I mean, if you look at, say, like a baseball, I think a team that's doing really, really well right now, we're gonna have to keep an eye on once it gets to the postseason for Division II is Altoona.
Mm-hmm.
They at the start of the week they picked up a big win over Bloomer. I mean, they're state ranked, I believe, and that's kind of been the case the last several years. Like I think Altoona's got a bit of a reputation for being a good baseball school.
Mm-hmm.
So they would be one I think once we get to Division II time for the postseason that we're gonna have to keep an eye on. Softball wise, there's going to be some around. Even though they lost the doubleheader yesterday, Triple Fall is always going to be in that conversation. Like every year, they're going to be in that conversation. We mentioned Division IV, that half section, between McDonald, Fall Creek, Colfax, whatever order, you think that sectional final or semifinal might be, chances are on the other half of that section will be Grantsburg waiting.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all teams that have had, some success. Like you could make a case for them. Certainly. You mentioned, Fall Creek won the Western Clover Belt already. They picked up a couple wins over McDonald. The second one being a very close one, a come from behind walk-off win for the Crickets. So, I think you look at golf, team like, for golf, like Eau Claire Memorial, always going to be a threat. I mentioned they won the Rice Lake Invite yesterday. Bloomer in Division II is going to be a really team to keep an eye on there. They've been, really good this year with a combination of three really good seniors, but also some really strong younger golfers as well. So that's going to be a team to keep an eye on there.
Altoona would win their first baseball title if they're able to pull this off. They won softball, they won
a lot of different
hockey,
things.
track and field, etc. But they have not yet won a baseball title.
They've been there relatively recently, correct?
Yeah,
I'm trying to think of the
feels like I'm trying to remember the exact year.
Yeah, they're 12. I mean, they're 12-4 right now. They're in the middle border. Middle border is usually a pretty good baseball conference when you think of the Prescotts of the world. St. Christ Central's doing well. Bowling, like.
Oh yeah, Altoona. Here you go. They were there in 2010 and 2023.
Oh, there we go. Okay, I'm like, I feel like that was literally last year because I was down there. Like, I know they've been there recently. You can't really get much more recent when it comes to going to state than last year.
Kind of impossible to be more recent than that. So maybe they pull that off there. I mean, there's obviously plenty of competition, but you never know again if they go on a bit of a run there. So
yeah,
so we've got some state potential there.
Yeah, it's gonna. Yeah, the next time I'm in here, we're gonna have an awful lot to talk. Well, Dan and I will have an awful lot to talk about. I will do my best to not ask him if he's ever met Cyndi Lauper, but I can't say that is not going to happen.
I'm trying to think of what I don't think I've ever asked this question. Like, what if he has met a famous musician and or who would he most want to meet? Because I know he likes a lot of songs. I'm not sure which acts are his favorites. He doesn't strike me as much of a. I mean, outside of Jake Owen, maybe he's met Jake Owen. All right, save that for next week. We'll try to do some as the most. Okay, is this the most overused term right now in sports? Intel. I see that with obviously NFL draft.
Maybe.
But now I'm seeing it with like, here's your fantasy intel for the week, which has been used for a while, but now I keep seeing it.
Now that you're supposed to look for it, you can't help but see it.
Right, and it's all over. I'm like, stop. This isn't
a CIA briefing.
Right, I know.
Like you're telling me which second string tight end might end up playing. Like,
right.
Calm down. I love fantasy football, but slow your roll a little bit.
It's going to be your backup defense. Here's some intel from the draft.
Is this the Johnny Munt year? Okay, calm down. I've had enough.
So, yeah. Good times. Good times in basketball. We'll get to that in a bit outside of the Pat Bev sitch. Dan will be back. He's doing something with Hudson right now. And, of course, the school day does not wait for the Dan Kasper Show.
No, he asked when yesterday he emailed me, and I'll tell you what I told him. He's like, oh, this is a heads up. Is that all right? I go, how dare you be a good father?
Ugh. The nerve.
In all caps. And then I'm like, no, that's fine.
Of
course. Luke and I will make our way through it.
Yeah, it's somehow.
We've talked about Cyndi Lauper. We've talked about sports media rights. I mean,
Train.
I
mean, look, we haven't even gotten the college bowl names.
Be lucky that it's May and not September, because we would be.
Oh yeah, we're in the ballpark at that point to do a tortured sports analogy. There's plenty to go with this. I mean, I'm simultaneously worried that the college football playoff will blow up the bowl situation, and also very happy that it will blow up the bowl situation potentially, because A, we have too many bowls, but B, all the names that could go away would suck. Yeah, I'd be okay with that ultimately. I mean, if we have to have life without the Boca Raton Bowl,
I don't know. Like,
I could go to Boca Raton if I feel like it.
But what am I gonna do on Wednesday, December 19th at 7 p.m.?
Ask John Murphy.
I want to watch the Boca Raton Bowl on ESPN.
Murph is the one who might have an issue, because remember, he watches all 44 bowl games.
I try to watch as many as I can.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm only one person.
Right. I don't remember the last time I watched a full bowl game outside of the College Football National Championship, where some of the
you didn't watch the entire Music City Bowl last year. How dare you?
I know what was
How
I thinking?
dare you?
I mean, that moment of who won?
Minnesota.
That's right. See, that's the thing.
Weren't you cheering APR? Because that's why they got...
Minnesota was in the they're in the
Motor City Bowl.
I thought you said Music City Bowl.
No, Motor City.
Not to be confused with the Motor City Bowl. See, that's the problem here, because I'm thinking Tennessee, and
Too many City Bowl.
Right. I'm thinking back to the time that the Gophers played Alabama, back when Alabama was an also ran.
Right, and they beat them.
I know. It was yeah, we beat Alabama, and then of course. A little different now. It seems so weird that the Gophers beat Alabama in the Music City Bowl, and it was in this century. It's just a total curio.
Is that Mason, the coach?
I think so. Yeah, because it was still in the aughts.
It was the early to mid 2000s, right?
Yeah. That was the
Glenn Mason.
Was it Shula was the coach at?
I think so.
Or is it? I'm thinking of it because they were running through coaches so fast, and everyone
right. And then they found one that was pretty okay.
And then it changed, and now the Gophers aren't
some
playing
Dolphins
Alabama.
Coach.
Yeah, someone like that. It didn't last there. So NBA playoffs. Contrary to popular belief, the Timberwolves Nuggets series will have a game 3. Gosh, these schedules are weird.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because you had game 1 Saturday, game 2 Monday, and then off until Friday.
Yeah. When I always mention the Simmons and Russillo podcast, so sorry I did, because that's where I got a lot of my info, and they're knowledgeable, not always right, but they're very knowledgeable. They said the OKC Dallas series is going to start in June, because that one seemed to take forever to get underway, and now hey, guess what? Now we're 2 games into that series. I know you have to sync stuff up because you don't want teams to go a very long time without playing, and the other teams to be constantly playing, so you end up with these weird kind of gaps as opposed to mega gaps. And yeah, if we have sweeps in the conference finals, of course, we're going to have a long wait to the NBA finals because those are locked in. You can't just jump right into it because of arena scheduling, all of that sort of stuff. I get that. But yeah, game 3 comes up tonight. We have the latest round today, and I'm not going to play it because I thought this was going to be a short quote, and it's actually almost a 3-minute video clip of Anthony Edwards in an interview with ESPN, and the headline is, "And the comparisons to Michael Jordan, quote, need to stop," close quote. But he's reiterating what he said the other day.
Right.
I asked Dan about that. Of course, Jordan, super fan. When he was saying we went on this whole thing about comps, and we always want to compare to someone else.
Right.
From the biggest all the way down to and I understand why we do it, because especially if you're not familiar with someone, you want to try to say, well, it's similar to this. Okay, now I get it. It's a way in. But in the NFL draft,
every quarterback that has great arm talent, it could be the next Patrick Mahomes. Well, no, Patrick Mahomes is on an all-time trajectory.
Probably not.
Yeah, exactly. I always appreciate when draft people will give more realistic ones. A few years ago, I think it was Nate Tice. Now with Yahoo, they're talking about tight ends for the draft. He's like, he reminds me of Jermaine Wiggins. I'm like, and part of that I'm sure is his dad coached the Vikings in the early mid-2000s.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that's a good one because it's like Wiggins he was productive. Like he had a good, solid career, but it's like, you're not saying like, oh, he's this, so he's going to be the next Rob Gronkowski. It's like, oh, stop jumping the shark.
Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
He does not. Michael Jordan was Michael Jordan. There wasn't a comp. He invented.
He is the comp.
Right. And because he became, I mean, it's still, I guess, arguably, because how do you break down? But arguably the best player in the history of professional basketball. Well, how do you then try to comp that going forward? So of course everyone's going to try to compare to that, hence all the baby Jordans, who was it? I'm trying to think of the first one that played for the Heat back in like the early 90s.
Harold Miner?
Yes, the first
Harold
one.
Miner. Then Vince Carter got the comp because he was such a great dunker, but he wasn't the all-around player Jordan was. Still a very good player, but like it's unfortunate when you've got a guy like a Vince Carter who had a great career, but you're like, yeah, but he wasn't Jordan. It's like, but no one said he should be.
Right. And no, Kobe Bryant was Kobe Bryant.
Right.
I know he did some of the fist pumps, and so there was imitation going on, but he was his own. LeBron James
is his own.
Steph Curry is his own. Those are the biggest. I think and you can maybe throw in Shaq to this list as well of like the most iconic players going back to the 80s and 90s, and then before Jordan would have been, of course, Bird and Magic.
Yes.
If we want to go way back, then you're like Wilt, Bill Russell, Kareem.
Right.
He's also 22. So
right. There's time. There's time. You don't need to be the first to say something. And that's just a big thing, a big bugaboo I have with sports media in general is everyone wants to be the first to say like, well, so then.
Okay. So because I'm feeling parallels, and it's a little different because I like the Bucks, I'm a Timberwolves fan.
Yeah,
those two can kind of coexist because
they're not. Yeah, they're not.
Rivals.
It's not like they're rivals. Like they play twice a year, and that's really it.
Yeah. But of course I remember the Giannis stuff. It's recent. I was talking about it on the radio, but it feels so like unprecedented. Again, I can't really compute what's going on right now. And again, this could all be wiped out, and the Nuggets win 4 in a row, and everything is tamped down. But you being a Bucks fan, so of course you're going to have a bit more of a passion for that. Do you recall as much of I mean, I know that the whole Anthony Edwards thing seems to be happening in a much quicker time frame, I think, because of the way the playoffs have gone so far and the domination of the Timberwolves in these 6 games. But do you recall kind of to quote Chance Dickman, needing a hot take simmer downer to Giannis talk of like, okay, whoa, he's looking really good. He's not necessarily going to be the next. Do you recall anything of that? Of like, hold on, national media, we appreciate it. We're glad you're doing it, but hang on here.
I'm sure there was at some point. Now though, my brain is just, I guess, now these days, when you hear about Giannis, it's like every year, and it's popped up again. It's always about, basically the national media trying to prop up the idea of like, well, what if he goes somewhere else? It's like, he just signed an extension. Like,
have we gotten any New York Knicks Photoshops freshly made in the last 2 weeks?
Right. That seems to be what they're spending their time on more. Like, I mean, at this point, he's a known entity. So like, you're not getting that. And he's been hurt and stuff. So like, but I'm trying to go back like a few years, like, and I don't even know like who. Because like they're like Giannis is just such a unique player. Like, how do you compare it? Like you can't really compare him to Jordan because they're not the same type of players. You can't really even compare him to LeBron because they're not the same type of players. Like, who does he compare to?
He was in that and this is a Simmons quote, but it kind of went mainstream. The unicorn era.
Yes. Remember
there were several unicorns in the mid to late teens. Him, I think Embiid was considered one. There was one, I'm blanking on who was kind of given the label, and it didn't really pan out, but it was a bigger star. But Giannis was one of them. Where it's different, and I see why the Jordan comparisons are happening to Edwards, because there's a lot stylistically that is similar. I keep seeing it's one play, but the back down fadeaway jumper at the end of game 1. And I remember watching that live. I mean, I was kind of following along. I'm like, okay, I better watch how this game ends. Because, of course, again, parent life, you're doing other stuff. But I'm watching that, and I'm sitting at the dinner table, and I just have this reaction like, oh my gosh, when I see it. And I'm not anticipating something Jordan-esque, but I saw that, and that's the one afterwards that Chuck was like, I've seen this, and other people are like, oh my gosh. And that, I think it may have even been that play, because I heard that play talked about a fair amount, that turbocharged this thing for the past week, almost week of that. Like, well, it's one play. He's got other aspects to his game. He is a different person. If he becomes the biggest star of the league, that'd be really cool to see, but that doesn't mean he's going to be Michael Jordan. He could be Anthony Edwards, like Patrick Mahomes became He wasn't the next Tom Brady.
Yeah, you look at Patrick Mahomes, like, do you really compare him to anybody? No. You're not saying,
he's his own unicorn.
Right, yeah, he's making his own mold.
Mm-hmm. I've never seen anyone like Patrick Mahomes in all the years I've watched the NFL. Never. And I don't know who would be the next one. I mean, it's subtle stuff, but who is it? I can't think of anyone.
No, and you shouldn't put that on somebody.
Right. So I am, as a Timberwolves fan, I am cautiously taking in all of the praise. Cautiously.
I was going to say, like, as a Minnesota sports fan, what's it like to see a team just kind of like wrecking shop like this right now?
I don't know.
Is it more exciting or more nerve-wracking given what you know?
Honestly, and Dan was kind of getting on me about this, and I don't understand, because I was equivocating a lot on Wednesday morning. But honestly, I'm good right now. Like, and yeah, I know that I mean, I did make the prediction that they'd probably beat the Celtics in 6. I mean, if I had to make an actual prediction, right? The way they're playing right now, yeah. Now, of course, this is also before the Cavaliers suddenly
took one.
Like, okay, I think that's more the we're not going to be getting ready for a Cavaliers versus an officiating adjusted Pacers conference finals.
Right.
NBA zags, and suddenly the Knicks get all the calls going against them in game 3. No, that's not going to happen. The Celtics are going to get there. Okay. But I don't know. I'm not used to this. I don't get it. Where there's this good, probably the closest to this level of excellence that I've seen was probably, I mean, I'm like, there are certain waves during certain seasons, and I could go back to the 91 World Series, but the Twins weren't dominating. They weren't like a 116 win team, one of those kind of things. The 98 Vikings are probably the closest where you're like, this thing is unstoppable. And you're like, wow, what's going on? But there was also that element of Vikingdom that was lingering over, like, okay, something bad could potentially happen.
The bounce back effect, like, okay, something's going to happen here.
Whereas with the Wolves, they've just sucked.
Right. There's not that, and in some ways, like, and that's how I felt for a while, like, kind of when the Bucks, obviously, because like, obviously, as a Bucks fan of my age, like, I remember 2001, but outside of that, like, I wasn't, you go back to like the 80s when they were, consistently a solid team. Like I was like 2, like, so
you've just known a lot of mediocrity. So
I've just known a lot of, hey, it's the trade deadline and they're going to trade for JJ Redick because they want to get the 8th seed because they want, they want that playoff gate so they can lose in 5 to the Pistons.
40 and 42. Let's go.
Right. So it was almost like it kind of felt like you're playing with house money.
Yeah. That's what it's like with the Timberwolves right now. It's different compared to some of the other teams.
Because the other ones have had, I mean, I guess maybe not so much the Wild, but there's hockey success in your brain.
Right. And you're anticipating, like, why? Yeah. Can they actually do this? With the Twins, I remember openly dreading last year when the Twins clinched the playoff spot. I'm like, dang it. We got to go through this again. The streak could go up to, like, what was it at, like 18? And
it was like upper teens.
Right. And I'm like, really? Do we have, like, there was part of me that wanted to avoid it, but you have to go through it. So that was a dread. And then they won it. And I remember being on the playground with my daughter as I'm watching, and I'm like, yes. And I'm being quiet because, of course, there's other parents and kids around. I'm not going to get all weird over the Twins winning a wild card game or opening round game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, with the Wolves, like, yeah, I know they could lose 4 in a row and it's done, but it would make sense because it's the Nuggets, I guess. The one thing I don't want them to do is do something historically, shockingly tragic, like go up 3-0 and lose.
Yeah.
Where they become a meme or something like that.
Yeah.
But no, seriously, like I can honestly say I'm good right now. This is the whole go along for the ride thing. That's where we're at right now. Enjoy the ride. Don't try to figure it. Just go. And it's fun at this point. This is why I said this on Wednesday morning. This is why you follow sports, because hopefully you get a team that gets to a point like this. And I'll be honest, I've been pondering, like, do I really want to follow sports that much? Because a lot of my teams don't do that well. Like, this isn't really that fun anymore. Like, and it's also sports. It's entertainment. If that is not fun, then don't follow it at all. Do other stuff that actually means stuff, or be engaged with other stuff that isn't going to break your heart, which shouldn't break your heart because, again,
it's sport.
It's sports.
It should, but it does.
Right. So, but seeing what's happening here, this is so freaking awesome right now. Like, okay, now I get it. This is why. And we'll see, again, a week from now, it could be totally different. Yeah, I got my Premier League team that is doing as best as it's done in decades. And they could miss out on the Champions League potentially. Again, that's another one where the expectations are skewed. Aston Villa is doing way better than expected, but they could now maybe lose out on a Champions League spot. Does that mean it's a terrible? No, it's not. It's the whole, you got to pull back. This is where you have to do the 35,000 foot thing, because it will drive you crazy.
Right.
Otherwise, side note, Wes Edens is going to be a richer man as a result of all of this, because Villa is going to be at a minimum in the Europa League, which is a bigger European championship than they're in right now. And they could be in the Champions League, which means a whole lot more money for that team, which means Aston Villa is that much more valuable, which means Wes Edens' value is that much higher. And I have to think that helps the Bucks in some way. I would think. I mean, it's not like he can literally go, oh, hey, my soccer team's more valuable. Now we can blow through the second apron. And
now we can get rid of Doc Rivers and have a fourth coach on the payroll.
Come on, bring in Darvin Ham. Have you thought at all about firing Doc Rivers, going for the fourth coach, and bringing in Ham?
Not really, and I don't even really like Doc Rivers, but I don't think, like, when they made that move, it was not fully necessarily about this year. It was like, okay, if this is the guy we want, it's going to be it's a multi-year thing.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think that's part of the reason Rivers accepted it as well. Like, knowing, like, okay, whatever happens this year, but getting a full off season of everything and then coming back next year kind of with obviously the sky high goals is the goal. So no, I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, okay. So 2 Bucks questions then. A, if for some reason they were to move on, because the Bucks have made a few complete surprise moves of late, who would be your choice for a future coach if they actually did that?
I don't know. Like, I'll be honest. Like, if this was like an NFL question when it came to like coordinators and stuff, I could probably give you a pretty good idea. But for the NBA, I'm not going to say I'm super up on like who would be a good fit for that. I know, who the Hornets just hire? Because I know he was an assistant under Budenholzer, wasn't he?
Lee?
I think it was Lee, but I don't think they would probably go back to that tree.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. Like, I'm not a big Doc Rivers fan, but like, I understand like having him come back next year. Like, you can't really put much of what happened, if anything, on him, because there were issues before he got there.
Right.
And then, the injuries that happened, I told Dan last week, like when they had won that, was it game 5, whatever it was, and that without
Game 5,
yeah. And that was the first time in NBA history that a team had won a playoff game missing its top 2 scorers. I'm like, that's crazy. Like, I mean, it makes sense, but like, you would think at some point someone would have did it. Like, that tells you kind of what they were up against, even as, they were the higher seed, but like being and going up against the Pacers team that they just weren't a good fit to play against.
Yeah.
Like, Indiana was a good matchup for them.
Mm-hmm. Is bad timing on that. So you mentioned Bud. Segue. Question 2. Thoughts on the very possible Mike Budenholzer hiring in Phoenix?
It's kind of funny given that, just 3 years ago, he was the team that beat them in the final, the coach, the team that beat them in the final. So kind of one of those small world.
I was thinking that too, like, wow, of all the teams. and not knowing who's going to be on that team
Right.
next year.
They're like the Bucks have got some things they need to figure out this offseason.
I'm guessing
it's even more so for the Suns.
I know there were the hot takes about, hey, they need to trade Dame. It's no. We're not going to.
No, like they're like Dame and Giannis will be back. Like, but I think everyone else on that roster is fair game to maybe not be.
Who knows?
Yeah, we don't know.
Whereas Phoenix, who really? I mean, you can make a case for Booker being gone. You can make a case for Durant being gone. Beal probably, oddly, might be the most likely to come back, and he's the third of the big three. So yeah, I guess if Budenholzer does go, let's presume that this is the likely is going to turn into reality. How do you really assess that team? Also, given how much quality is around there, Denver, OKC, Minnesota.
Who knows what's going to happen with the Clippers?
I don't know. Like, again, that's a feast or famine team. As long as Steph Curry is still playing basketball, I'm not completely counting out the Warriors. Dallas is in pretty. There's enough there. You can make a case that Phoenix is a play-in team next year, possibly, or not, or maybe they all come back and Budenholzer's the guy. Does Mike Budenholzer? So, for just the sake of argument, because we could probably spend an hour and a half trying to figure out Suns machinations here. So let's presume it's Durant, Booker, Beal are back under Bud. So what we've seen of Bud as a coach of the Bucks, of course, also with the Hawks, how will that work with the Suns? And or will it work effectively like NBA Finals work with the Suns?
That's that's going to be the question, because Bud was a fantastic, no matter where he was a fantastic regular season coach.
That's true.
But the issue with him was postseason success.
Mm-hmm.
That's ultimately why he was relieved of his duties with the Bucks. And that's an interesting combo, because if they run it back, like that's how that team's going to be judged. That team could win 65 games in the regular season, but if it loses in the second round, Phoenix isn't going to be happy.
That owner, Matoshiba, I mean,
he wants it.
Yeah, he's got a ton of money and he's going to make stuff happen. That may not work, obviously, but that's the plan, clearly. That's going to be a fascinating one to watch. How rigid is, but that's the knock on Mike Budenholzer.
Mm-hmm.
His rigidity as a head coach. Will that system work with especially Booker and Durant? I mean, the Beal thing, okay, fine. He again, definitely third wheel. But Durant he's getting up there in age. He's getting up there in health. I don't know how long that's going to hold. Like, I would go so far as to say I don't think all three will be back next year. I'm not sure in what combination, but something is going to change there. And I don't know that I trust that team enough, that organization enough. I know they're in a better spot than they were under Robert Sarver, clearly.
Yeah.
But I don't know that they're... I put it this way. If they hire Mike Budenholzer, I'm curious, and I don't want to make a prediction yet, if they're going to mold the team around what could be optimized best for Bud, which we as Bucks fans and Bucks followers might be like, is that a wise move necessarily?
Right.
And I know there was the whole wave of, I wish we had Bud back. There was so much of that this past year.
Yeah,
I get that.
I don't know how much different it would have been.
Yeah.
Is Bud going to win the playoffs without Giannis and Dame?
No one was going to do that. That's the problem.
Right.
I mean,
I get the regular season kind of inconsistencies, because Bud was a better regular season coach, but if they had a better regular season but still lost, first or second round, people would still be bummed.
The Celtics ended up being a force. They were going to be the 1 seed. So let's say Eric Spoelstra were the coach. Take the arguably the best one, right? If you had a fantasy draft coaches, I think Spoelstra he'd be my number 1 pick. Let's say that gets the Bucks the way the season went, and had he been coach from the beginning, they're probably the 2 seed ultimately. So the Knicks beat, I'm already forgetting. Who did the Knicks beat in the first round of the playoffs?
Sixers.
Yeah. So Bucks Sixers, well, the way Maxey went off, would the Bucks have won that series? With no Giannis, no Dame?
It's tough to say.
See, that's the thing. Like, you could have a way better coach. They probably would have been the 2 seed, and they very well, even though the matchup's better.
To me, this year, just from the start, it didn't click. Like, it didn't, like, I will say this, like this Bucks team, like there were some moments, but it just overall just wasn't an entirely fun team to watch.
No.
Like it just didn't seem like it ever clicked for them. And part of that is Dame coming in as late as he did, and just different meshings and different people and different things. Like it just didn't work. Like sometimes you just say, you know, it didn't work. And you kind of throw your hands up and say, okay, well, you try again with a different combination next year.
Picks and predicts is next. Casper's back. He'll be on to do the picks and predicts, though I will make one predict. Bucks will have they will have a noticeably better year next year. Just everything will work a little better. And we're going to have the big, long ESPN write-up on that sometime in November.
Bucks are back.
Yeah. All right. Bye, folks. Casper's back in a few moments.
Final hour right now. How'd it go, Brandon?
You're not Luke.
Just better looking, right? Yeah. Okay. I'm back after a quick trip to the
Not quick trip.
Roosevelt School. How about that over there? So, all right. Should we do some picks and predicts?
Let's do it.
Let's do some picks and predicts. Brought to you by the Elbow Room in Eau Claire. Going to go check out some of the action, some of the games this weekend. Head on over to the Elbow Room, located right next to the Banbury Place in Eau Claire. Let's start off with hoops, playoff hoops tonight. Will the T-Wolves pick up another win and go 3-0 in this series starting or tonight?
I hope Luke's not listening, but I'm going to say no. I think like that's kind of what we were talking about, just the T-Wolves and how well everything's going here. It's like at this point I still think now I think they win the series, but like I think the Nuggets are too good to have it happen again.
Yeah.
And it's less about the T-Wolves and more about them when I say that.
Yeah, I agree. And that's where I'm going with the Nuggets too. I can see them coming out. I wouldn't be surprised. Like I agree with what Dr. Crow said a little bit earlier. He sees like T-Wolves going 1-1 in these next two.
And that's good. Yeah. Like for them, that's a win.
Yeah.
If you get 1 of 2 on the road, that's good for them. But I just game 3 coming off of, the butt kicking that was Monday. Like I see the Nuggets coming out fired up.
I do too.
And they get this one.
And I know that environment is probably going to be electric over in Minnesota to begin with, but I think if they can weather that,
playing in altitude is a thing. Like it's a thing.
Yep. So no, I'm going with the Nuggets too. How about Pacers versus Knicks? And a game like this is intriguing to me to watch with all the talk from Rick Carlisle about officiating and small market. Then I'm always like, okay, are they going to do the makeup stuff the following game?
I don't know, because didn't we hear the Sixers have not small market, but like similar complaints about the officiating in their series?
Yeah.
So like so far, like we haven't had that course correction yet.
Right. Which means, of course, the NBA wants the Knicks to go to the conference finals. So
right.
Yeah.
But I'm going to take the Knicks again.
Ooh, okay.
I almost went with the Pacers for kind of the same reason we were talking about the Nuggets in there. But, like, I don't know. This Knicks team, like, they're just comfortable playing in these rock fight type games.
I'm going Pacer. I just think the Knicks are a little bit banged up right now. And that's this thing is like the Pacers could easily be 2-0. If they would just close these games out, they could be 2-0. I think they get the win tonight to go 2-1. Let's do some Stanley Cup picks. Stanley Cup playoff picks. How about, by the way, Carolina down 3? That's
really messing over my Penguins, because if Carolina made the Stanley Cup Finals, the Jake Gensel draft pick compensation would have been a first rounder. Now it's looking like it's lower than that, so that's not ideal.
Let's do Florida at Boston. This one is tied up at 1 apiece.
I'm gonna go Florida. I like what I saw game 2.
I'm gonna go Florida as well.
Florida.
Edmonton at Vancouver. The Battle of Canada is at stake.
Oh man, that game 1 was a tough one for Edmonton. They're up and they give it away. I think they win tonight.
They're my Stanley Cup pick, so I got to go with Edmonton for tonight. Let's just do the Saturday ones here because you have the Rangers visiting Carolina. Do they sweep?
No, I think Carolina gets one. If Carolina really wants to get back in the series, they need to bring out their alternate Hartford Whaler jerseys.
Yes, I agree. Dallas at Colorado. That series is tied at 1 apiece.
I'm gonna go Colorado.
I'm gonna go Dallas. I'll go Dallas. Let's do some baseball picks now to wrap it up here. Let's go. Let's start it off. Well, let's just do Brewers and Cardinals. The next 3, how many do they win?
I'm gonna say the Brewers win 2 or 3. I'm gonna say that they lose tonight in Robert Gasser's debut, but then they win the 2 games over the weekend, and they take 3 of 4 from the vaunted stinky Cardinals.
You're good.
Either
one. Yeah.
Either one.
Peralta gets to start on Sunday, I believe, right? I think
Saturday or Sunday, one of the 2. Because
he's serving the suspension or
right,
whatever.
Right.
So I agree. I go 2 out of 3. I think you got Lance Lynn on the mound tonight. But the offense did a fantastic job against Sonny Gray, who's been off to a great start.
I mean, Sonny Gray is their best pitcher. He's their ace. Like the Cardinals came into the season kind of with the idea of trying to supplement their offense, which they were banking on still being good, with just a bunch of like veteran inning eaters, even though Sonny Gray is more than that. And it hasn't worked. Yeah. Like their hitters or their pitchers are just getting hit around. Like for me, getting that win over Sonny Gray was big.
Yeah.
Just because he's their ace. You know, it's like if you're playing the Brewers and you beat Freddie Peralta the first game of a series, you're probably feeling good the rest of that weekend.
Right. Yep. Chicago at Pittsburgh. Got a couple minutes left here.
Cubs?
Yes.
Okay.
Cubs at Pittsburgh. Sorry. That would be the Pirates.
I will take Cubs 2 or 3. Pirates are scuffling. Like, you know, just like last year, they got off to that quick start. And, you know, the Cubs, like the Brewers, are kind of starting to get a little bit healthier.
Yeah.
So I'll take Cubs 2 or 3.
I'll go Cubs 2 out of 3 as well. Last one then, Twinnies at the Blue Jays. That should be an interesting one. Yeah.
Twins are firing on all cylinders, but I will take the Blue Jays to take 2 or 3.
I'm going the same way. I'm going to go with the Blue
Stop
Jays.
Stop copying me.
2 out of 3 as well. So, all right, that's our picks and predicts. Again, brought to you by the Album Room. What was your cream of the crop?
We didn't do it.
Oh, do cream of the crop really quick. I saw somebody texted a cream of the crop.
There we go.
Really quick, John went his cream of the crop, right fielder Brent Rooker from the Oakland A's. He's batting .277, 9 home runs, 24 RBIs, all on a surprisingly decent team with the A's.
A's are off to a pretty decent start.
Mark Kotsay, manager of the year.
If they keep their head above water, yes.
Yeah.
Very quickly, I am going to go. You mentioned them earlier, New York Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
Up 3-0. Like they have, I mean, you were not the only one that had high expectations for this Carolina team.
Yeah.
And they have come out firing, carrying over the momentum from the previous series.
Mm-hmm. I am going to go with a couple of golfers. They kind of opened up the week as like our weekend hangover, like the highs and the lows. One's Thomas Longbella, former Chippewa Falls native over there.
Chippewa Falls native, yeah.
Getting his first PJ Tour
sanctioned win.
And Mr. Nick Antman from Blue Gold's Golf shot a 63 over the weekend.
Woo.
So last week he goes to Arrowhead and Nakusa, shoots a 66, ties the program record, follows that up by shooting a 63
by setting it and then some.
Yeah.
Wow.
So good week for some golfers around here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, Brandon and I are going to record Top 5 Plus as part of the podcast. Top 5 sports months, in our opinion. So that's going to be coming up as soon as we shut off the mics. We're going to record. Then we got to turn the mics back on. You know the drill. Have a good weekend. We'll be back at it Monday morning.